Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen dumps her boyfriend because he eats a donut and fails a TikTok fitness challenge. Am I the jerk for being shocked and hurt after my girlfriend broke up with me because I ate a donut and failed a fitness challenge? I'm in a state of complete confusion and devastation right now, and I really need your help. I, 27 male, have been dating my girlfriend, Layla, who's 24, for a year. She's obsessed with fitness. Her diet is so extreme that her body fat is practically non-existent, only 9%, and she's developed what I can only describe as orthorexic tendencies, an obsession with cleanliness and perfection in every aspect of her life. Yes, she looks healthy because she has visible muscles, but her hair is falling out, and she has very low libido and energy, and her blood work consistently shows multiple vitamin deficiencies. I've pointed out that what she's doing is unhealthy and extreme, but she got extremely upset, yelling that I'm encouraging gluttony and hedonism. Normally she's a calm person, but food seems to make her unreasonably angry. I'm a casual gym goer, and I try to eat healthy and work out, with rest days, unlike her. I'm at a healthy weight, I have a decent amount of strength, and I'm content with that. Layla seems to get really upset when I miss a day at the gym. Recently, she saw a trend on TikTok called 75 Hard and suggested that we do it together. It seemed like a fun challenge, so I agreed, but I wasn't too keen on necessarily finishing it. I just wanted to try the lifestyle out. Last week, after a particularly stressful day at work, I decided to indulge in a donut. It was a small treat, and I knew it wasn't in line with Layla's program, but it felt like a minor concession given how much stress I'd been under. When she saw me eating the donut, she was furious, claiming my lack of discipline was an outright betrayal of her commitment. She accused me of being disrespectful and selfish, saying that my failure was utterly pathetic and calling me weak and pitiful. Layla's anger was explosive and aggressive. She yelled at me, saying things like, "You're so weak, you're bringing me down," and "I'm disgusted with you. How could you do this to me, or to yourself?" The argument escalated quickly. She accused me of not being worthy of her dedication to fitness and said that if I couldn't follow her standards, she couldn't be with me. The breakup was dramatic and chaotic, with her slamming doors and storming off while shouting about how I disgusted her with my lack of willpower. I've never felt this ashamed of eating something before. I'm feeling crushed. I didn't think that eating a single donut would lead to such a dramatic end, and her extreme reaction and aggressive behavior has left me wondering if I actually am in the wrong. Am I just lazy, hedonistic, and undeserving like she said? Update. Her only friend just called me from the hospital. Layla and I haven't spoken since she left, and it turns out that she stopped eating and started having excessive daily runs. Her friend told me that she ran 40 miles and had a heart attack. He called me because he thought she seemed really stressed over the breakup, and I'm considering visiting her now. Should I? I'm just concerned for her, but also I can't take her back if she continues to indulge in this unhealthy behavior. Update 2. I just visited her and we had a long talk. She apologized repeatedly and cried, saying she didn't mean to hurt me and was just looking out for me. For the first time, she opened up about her issues. She explained that she follows such a strict diet and workout regimen because it gives her a sense of control. She also felt that if she rejected hedonism, which she considers eating to be, the universe would reward her and everything would be okay. Conversely, if she ate more, the universe would punish her and something bad would happen. Layla also confessed that she had had overeating problems in the past. We decided to get back together, and I'll try to support her through this. Most of you have advised me to leave her, but I genuinely don't want to. I can't leave someone just because they yelled at me a few times. Obviously, if this behavior becomes a frequent issue, which I doubt it will, we might break up again. But for now, I just want to support her through recovery. I know this isn't what I have to do, I just want to. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Life tip: never stay in a relationship with someone who's completely bonkers. Now put down that donut, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for refusing to swap meals every time my girlfriend orders something she doesn't like? Maybe I'm making too big a deal out of this, or maybe it's a bigger problem than I realized, which is why I'm posting here. This has been going on since we started dating back in college. I'll use last night as an example. I'm the safe order guy. I stick to chicken tenders, steak, a burger, orange chicken, etc. It's not that I dislike other foods, but if I'm going to try something adventurous, I want to be the one to buy it, prepare it, cook it, and control the whole process. She, on the other hand, always orders something exotic. The special, the catch of the day, the tasting menu, and without fail, she says, "I don't really like this. I should have just ordered what you got. Let's switch." Then she grabs my plate. Sometimes I can handle her food, but other times it's so bad that I end up going hungry. I brought this up to her, and she told me up front that she thinks it makes her quirky and fun. She's been like this since we started dating. Last night, we went to a sports bar after our beach volleyball league game. We were both starving. I just wanted food, so I ordered chicken tenders and fries. This sports bar was offering a snow crab special, which of course she wanted. I begged her to order something they couldn't mess up, and she accused me of being boring. When the food came out, her crab legs looked, smelled, and tasted like rotting wax. Naturally, she didn't want them and expected to swap with my tenders. I finally stood up for myself and said no. I told her that she could send them back and order something else. Cue the massive fight. She accused me of wasting food, of not cooperating with her, and of not reading the room, whatever that meant. I refused to give in and told her I wasn't doing it this time. She started crying and demanded to go home. I said no, I was too hungry and I was going to eat my food. She ended up getting an Uber to a friend's house and I haven't seen her since. I'm fed up. Is this breakup worthy, or what should I do about this? Edit. We're engaged, we live together, and we share credit cards and bank accounts. I'm very Joey doesn't share food, and if someone pulled this on me, I'd be gone. She sounds annoying, entitled, and slightly manipulative, expecting OP to go hungry because she's playing the quirky and adventurous foodie role. It seems like she's testing his limits rather than being genuinely adventurous. It's like she wants him to suffer to prove how endearing he finds her. OP. To be fair, I don't think she expects me to go hungry. I bet she's never even noticed if I finish her meal or not. That's telling if she doesn't even notice. Makes you wonder what else she's not noticing in your relationship. OP. I don't want to sound like a crybaby because I've chosen this relationship. But yeah, I do most of the work. It's only quirky and fun if she eats what she orders. Why should you have to give up your food because of her bad choices? At the core, it feels like a test to see how much nonsense you'll tolerate. You haven't seen her since? She owes you an apology, but I doubt you'll get one. Update 3 days later. I don't remember the exact timeline of Sunday night, but the post was locked when she texted me around 6 p.m. She told me that I owed her a huge apology for how I behaved at the sports bar and during the volleyball game. I still don't know what that's about. I asked her where she was, and she said she'd tell me once I apologized. I refused, and she told me she needed time to figure out whether this relationship was right for her. I told her I was exhausted by her behavior and I couldn't do it anymore. She hung up, and I haven't heard from her since. She hasn't come back to pick up any clothes, so I don't know where she is. I canceled all of our shared credit cards and opened a new bank account. I also took half the money from our shared account, but she hasn't withdrawn any or used her debit card. I'm a little concerned because she's essentially disappeared, but I'm not too worried yet. If I haven't heard anything by Friday, I'll call her parents. I suspect she's doing this for attention. Final edit. I called her parents, and they haven't heard from her either. They thought she was with me. Now they're worried because of my call. I'm going to drop off her important belongings at their house and wash my hands of this. Whatever happens next is her choice. Goodwill Karen unknowingly explodes on manager, gets banned from the store. I've been working as a Goodwill donation attendant for almost 4 years now, and I've seen my fair share of entitled customers, but this one was too good not to share. It was Labor Day weekend, and as usual, we were slammed with oversized donations from a parade of customers. We were understaffed, just me and another coworker, Jenny, and barely keeping up with the volume. As I leaned outside to let a waiting customer know I'd be with them soon, another woman, who we'll call Karen, marched up, shoved the other customer out of the way, and tossed a dirty vacuum at my feet before walking off. Karen's cart was at the back of the line. Our rules state that for customer safety and convenience, every customer must wait their turn and cannot dump their donations on the ground and leave. I told Karen she couldn't do that and that she was breaking the rules, but she ignored me as if I wasn't even there. Feeling defeated, I took her dirty and now broken vacuum and tossed it in the trash, then informed Ginny of what had happened. That's when I noticed Karen returning with more items. I stepped out again and told Karen she had to wait her turn like everyone else. She snapped back. "Calm down, you little jerk. I don't care about your rules. I'm going to dump my stuff here, and there's nothing you can do about it." She then marched back to her car to get another load. Meanwhile, her husband was standing in the second lane, staring me down menacingly, as if he were ready to attack me to let his precious Karen do whatever she wanted. I walked back inside with Karen's donations, which were all unsellable by the way, feeling angry. Jenny witnessed Karen's outburst and was not having it. The nice lady I was helping had secondhand embarrassment. Then, right on cue, the Wicked Witch of the West returned with her third and final load of junk. I tried again to tell her that she couldn't do this, but this time she completely ignored me, shoved the nice lady out of the way again, and entered the production area, which is employees only, where she came face to face with Jenny. Jenny told her, "Ma'am, you can't come in here," and Karen went ballistic. She threw her stuff at Jenny and shouted, "This is Goodwill. I'm giving you free stuff, aren't I? Buzz off," before stomping out of the building. When Karen tried to leave, 2 more cars had pulled up in line behind her, trapping her in. At this point, Karen was absolutely seething. She stormed out of her car and barked at me, "Go get your manager. I'm going to get you fired." I couldn't help but grin and replied, "Oh, you mean that manager? The one you just told to buzz off?" Plot twist, Jenny is the manager. Karen's face went pale and she huffed as she awkwardly walked back to her car where she had to wait in line, just long enough for the security cameras to capture her license plate. So yeah, she's permanently banned from our store now. Am I the jerk for exposing my parents when they forgot about me on their wedding? I know this might seem like a weird situation, but I feel so angry and depressed that I need to vent even if no one is listening. I, 17 female, was recently forgotten on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad, who's 50, proposed to my mother, who's 49, on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister, even though they were together before, I was elated and everyone celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding on a small event in Hawaii with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, who's 25, to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother, who's 22, to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time together shopping and socializing. Similarly, my dad and brother had a close bond through football and cars. That has always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself into my family's hobbies and groups, but I was always rebuffed. Maybe they sensed that my interest wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had my sister and dad had my brother. My parents had each other, and my siblings were closer to each other than to me, leaving me feeling very lonely and isolated at home. During the preparation for the wedding, it was initially suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, who's 3, so that idea quickly dismissed. Later, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or give a short speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with this, even though it hurt to know that I would be the only member of the family without a role or any involvement on that day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings became more and more absorbed in the wedding planning. I noticed that my mom didn't invite me dress shopping, and whenever they discussed the venue or the event, I was left out. I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me something, anything about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago at the end of August. The day before departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She was confused for a moment and then snapped at me for not being ready. I asked her if I even had a ticket, and her face went pale. They hadn't bought me a ticket, and I wasn't sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without a stable income, I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and a few other friends attending the wedding, but they had forgotten about me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it and that they could just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline. I replied by asking her, "Then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony?" She had gone with my sister to buy theirs and all of the other female guests dressed months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and told me to get over it, saying that I had never been a girly girl, so I could just wear whatever. I was upset by this because even though I'm not the most feminine person, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding. It was about the fact that I was excluded from everything that had been going on for months. We ended up getting into a fight, with them calling me entitled and accusing me of intentionally making myself small so they would forget me, as if that were a valid excuse for ignoring me. They then told me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing. I responded with a defiant, "Fine," and then went to my room. The next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they posted loads of pictures on Instagram and Facebook about how perfect and magical their whole week was. People quickly noticed that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why. They replied that unfortunately, I had become ill before the trip and I had to stay behind. My blood boiled when I heard this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, but it was. I decided to take a test, proving that I had not caught the illness they claimed I had, and I posted a picture of myself holding the negative test with the caption, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone who had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and for good measure, I also tagged every person invited to the event. I wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before departing and how they had actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side and others couldn't believe it, thinking there must be more to the story than I was saying. One thing is for certain, I completely ruined my parents' wedding and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up for myself, but after receiving a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later when they came back and furiously went off on me for my immature actions and spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly. I began to feel awful. I can't stand my family and I can't stand being in this house, but I can't leave yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better, and now I'm second-guessing everything I did, from not speaking up earlier to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty about the lack of connection with my family, and I wonder if I could have done more. So, am I the jerk for ruining my parents' wedding when they forgot about me? Not the jerk. Can you move in with your grandma? Their history of rebuffing you whenever you try to participate with them says that this wasn't a one-off. It's like they don't even consider you family. No judge is going to force you back to their house at 17. If you have a place to go, get your things and your documents and go. Am I the jerk for blowing up at my boyfriend after he called me 73 times while I was out with my friends? I, 26 female, have been dating my boyfriend, Sam, 42 male, for 2 years, and I'm at my breaking point. Sam is ridiculously clingy to the point where it's completely out of control. He's always been a bit needy, and I even found it adorable at first. Now it's just exhausting. If I'm not with him or texting him every 5 minutes, he goes into full-blown panic mode. I'm just tired. So the other night, I went out for a girls' night with my friends. We had planned it weeks in advance, and I made it clear to Sam that I wanted a night to myself to relax and hang out with my friends. He seemed fine with it, or at least he pretended to be. But as soon as I left the house, my phone started blowing up. He texted me things like, "Miss you already. Wish you were here." And then, not 5 minutes later, "Why haven't you responded? Is something wrong?" At first, I sent short replies to keep him calm, but when I didn't respond immediately because I was having a conversation with my friends, he lost it. He started sending me texts like, "I'm getting really worried. Are you okay?" And, "Do you not love me anymore?" I tried to ignore it, but then the call started. I sent the first couple to voicemail, but he kept calling over and over, nonstop. I told him to stop, that I was fine and would talk to him later, but he just kept escalating. By the time I checked my phone again, he had called me 73 times and left several voicemails, most of which were him freaking out, saying things like, "I don't know why you're doing this to me. Why are you ignoring me?" And, "You know I can't handle this kind of silence. You're breaking my heart." At this point, my friends were looking at me like, what the actual heck? I was embarrassed and furious. I had to step outside just to get some air because I could feel myself about to explode. When I finally got home, I was fuming. I walked in and he was sitting on the couch, looking all sad, as if he was the victim in the situation. I lost it. I told him he was acting completely insane and that no normal person behaves like this. I told him his constant neediness and obsessive behavior was suffocating and that I felt like I was dating a stalker rather than a boyfriend. He immediately started crying, full-on ugly sobbing, telling me that I was being cruel and that he only acted like this because he loves me so much and can't stand the thought of losing me. He said things like, "You're all I have. If you leave, I'll have nothing." And, "Everyone else leaves me, but I thought you were different." He even brought up some childhood issues about how his mom didn't care about him and his dad disappeared. But come on, I have my own problems too, and I wouldn't be blowing up his phone while he's hanging out with his friends, if he actually had any. I wasn't having it. I told him flat out that his behavior was toxic and that he needs professional help. I told him he was draining me emotionally and that if he didn't get it together, I was done. He freaked out even more, begging me not to leave, getting on his knees, saying things like, I can't survive without you. I can't live without you in my life. It was honestly terrifying how dependent he's become on me. I had to lock myself in the bathroom just to get away from him. Now he's sulking and giving me the silent treatment, maybe trying to manipulate me into apologizing and feeling bad for him. Some of my friends think I was too harsh and that I should have handled it more gently. But honestly, I've reached my limit. I'm not his therapist, and I'm tired of being treated like his emotional support animal. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your boyfriend's behavior is beyond clingy. It's obsessive and manipulative. You have every right to feel frustrated and angry. It's not your responsibility to fix his issues, and it's not healthy for either one of you if he becomes so reliant on you. Hopefully, he takes your advice and seeks professional help. Otherwise, it might be time to reevaluate your relationship. Stay strong and stick to your boundaries. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Leave him now, OP, or they'll end up making a Netflix series about you one day. This guy's an episode of Unsolved Mysteries waiting to happen. Am I the jerk for refusing my contribution to the household budget after my wife went against our agreement? Before my wife and I got married, we made sure to agree on a lot of the big things: where we would live, how we would handle our families, and how we would raise our kids. There were deal breakers for both of us, so we wanted to be on the same page. One of our agreements was that as long as our kids were full-time students, they wouldn't have to contribute financially to the household budget. Of course, they would still be responsible for chores and such. If they weren't full-time students, we decided they would have a 6-month grace period, after which they would be required to pay rent and buy their own food. The rent would be equal to a quarter of what someone working full-time at minimum wage would make. We came to this agreement back in 1998. Our eldest chose not to go to university and used his 6 months after graduation to work, save up, and plan a trip around the world. When he returned, he started an apprenticeship and is now a welder. Our middle went to university and is now a nurse. Our youngest, however, did 1 semester of college and decided it wasn't for him. He also made the choice that he didn't want to work. After the 6-month grace period, I informed him that he would now be responsible for paying rent and covering his food expenses. Instead of stepping up, he ran to his mom, claiming he couldn't afford it. Without discussing it with me first, she told him he didn't have to pay. This was a unilateral decision on her part, completely disregarding what we had agreed upon years ago. For context, my wife handles all of our bills. I give her a set amount every month, which covers our household expenses. Any money she earns is hers to spend as she sees fit or to save for our vacations. In response to her decision, I chose to reduce my contribution to the household budget by the amount equivalent to his rent and 1/3 of our grocery bill. When she asked me why, I reminded her of our agreement, and I told her that since she decided to ignore it, I was doing the same. As a result, she's been covering the difference by using the money that would normally go into our vacation account, as well as cutting back on her personal spending. She's furious about this and accuses me of being financially manipulative, calling me a jerk for handling it this way. I, on the other hand, believe that she either needs to accept the situation or help our youngest grow up and take responsibility. She even tried to get our older kids on her side, but they both agree with me. So, am I the bad guy here? Not the jerk. The other two got tough love. Why does the youngest get away with it? Favoritism sucks. OP. There was no need for tough love. The 2 older ones knew the deal, and they did great on their own. Our eldest, who's now a welder, lived at home throughout his entire apprenticeship and only paid rent equal to a quarter of minimum wage, not a quarter of what he was actually earning. During those years, he saved up and eventually bought a house. Our daughter, a registered nurse, still lives at home. She also only pays rent equal to a quarter of minimum wage, not a quarter of what she earns as an RN. Everyone sucks here. This issue doesn't seem to be primarily about money, it's about raising your kids to be functional adults. Neither of you seem to be focusing on that, instead getting caught up in a power struggle. Yes, your wife shouldn't have unilaterally changed the agreement you made, but that doesn't justify withholding funds without discussing it with her first. Punishing her financially without a conversation isn't a healthy way to handle things either. Involving your other kids in this conflict isn't fair to them, and it's not appropriate to drag them into your fight. You both need to sit down and discuss what you really want for your son and how to help get him there, while also considering the impact on your overall financial situation. If necessary, seeking help from a counselor could provide a neutral space to focus on the real issue and avoid any petty retaliations. The goal should be working together to guide your son, not scoring points on each other. Karen expects me to dress differently because she's insecure. Hello everyone. I, 19 female, have recently had a situation with my close friend, also 19 female. and it has had me conflicted on whether or not to compromise what I believe in order to maintain this 4-year-long friendship. My friend and I have always been super open and honest with each other when it comes to personal details, whether it be mental health or struggles we go through, and it's something I value and appreciate within our friendship. We have both been open and honest about having issues surrounding the way we view our bodies, and have always been big supporters of encouraging each other to embrace and love the way we look. However, recently this has seemed to change on her part. This shift all started when I went through my very first real heartbreak, where I came out of a long-term relationship. In dealing with this heartbreak, I have not only tried to work on my mental health, but physical as well. In doing so, over the last 3 months of hard work and discipline, I have started to see solid results in the way I look, including having a more toned and defined stomach, something I've always wanted to achieve. As I've seen these results, I became more confident in dressing in more revealing clothes, you could say, surrounding my midriff. As I've been dressing more like this, my friend has increasingly made little comments about reasons why I should change, and most of them didn't seem to make sense, whether it be the weather or location, etc. She has also started to criticize herself regarding her midriff more, to which I always make sure to reassure her that all bodies are beautiful and encourage her to embrace and love what she's got working for her. This kept happening for about a month until last week when she made a statement that caught me off guard. My friend informed me that the way I was dressing served as a trigger to other people and herself, and she does not want me to wear clothes that show my midriff around her because it makes her feel uncomfortable as well as others. This hurt me to hear, as I never do anything with ill intent, but also because it made me feel insecure about my body as well, as if I should be ashamed in some sense. After considering what she said, I informed her that I would not be changing the way I dress, and told her that telling someone their body is a trigger is wrong and damaging to my mental health. She called me selfish and said she would have thought I would be more understanding, but I'm not the friend she thought I was. I'm starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong and should just be covering up around her. So, am I the jerk for standing my ground and not changing the way I dress? Edit/update. I just want to thank everyone for their words of encouragement and support. I appreciate it all. I don't have a huge update so far, but said friend reached out wanting to meet up and talk. She did not clarify it from her side if it was about our last conversation. Considering all the advice I received and support I had by standing my ground, I've decided to leave a bit of distance between us for the time being. I sent her a message, and to sum it up, I let her know I understand body image can be a big struggle, and although I still want to support her on her self-love journey, the way she chose to address me and my body was not okay. I also addressed that since I am taking time to build up my mental health as well, I need to be surrounded by people who would rather build me up than tear me down for my accomplishments. I tried to be firm in the fact I would not be continuing on this friendship without an apology and proper change in her words and actions, as sorry can only go so far if change doesn't follow. I'm trying to be as understanding as possible because I know body image issues can play into a lot of delicate things that can be damaging to oneself, but I'm also aware that I am not a professional and cannot offer her the help that she might need to be seeking. I have not yet received a response from her end. Not the jerk. For goodness sake, you have nothing to feel bad about. A real friend should be happy for you, not make you feel bad about what you have achieved. Show that midriff off. I say that as a fat person. This reminds me of victim blaming in a way, as if the way we dress should affect others who can't control their own issues. I agree with this commenter. Wear what makes you feel good. It doesn't really matter what anyone else has to say. I also want to congratulate you on your goals. To me, this doesn't sound like a revenge body situation, but one where you actively took initiative to work on your mental and physical health to make you happy. That is the best reason in the world to make any changes for yourself. It's like victim creating. I don't know, but I see the similarities as well. Like, you're doing good and showing it off, and that makes me feel bad for not doing good. Like the kid that got an A on a test and was proud of it, and the kid who got a D feels bad. But it's not the kid with the A's fault. Definitely not the jerk. Definitely show off that midriff. And your friend really needs to work on some self-esteem stuff. She's the jerk for taking her insecurities out on you, but I also understand why she's doing it. I hope she gets some help and learns to love herself too. I hope that you're loving yourself as well. Congratulations on picking up something so life-changing and making yourself more disciplined. You should be proud of yourself. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her friend? Please let us know. I need some new Live Laugh Love shirts, Reddit boy. I want to show my midriff off as well. Am I the jerk for siding with a homewrecker? My sister, Annie, she's in her 30s, is obsessed with a girl, let's say Jane, she's in her 20s, that her husband cheated on her with in mid-2020. I don't know why. Jane's not the first or the last. She was one of the decent ones. Didn't realize he was married, broke it off when she found out, and sent the proof of his cheating to his wife. Somehow, he spun this as, "She's trying to break us up," and my sister fell for it. Which is stupid, because Jane already blocked them on everything. He's the one that basically stalked her for months after. Anyway, Annie's been stalking Jane's socials. Anytime Jane posts about something bad happening, Annie calls me up to gloat. Anytime she posts about anything good that happens, Annie starts crying about how it's not fair. In the last few months, Jane apparently got a high-paying new job, got engaged, and is pregnant. Annie had a full-on meltdown over it. It's all she ever wants to talk about. She'll call me at least twice a week with this crap and text me multiple times a day. She doesn't want advice, doesn't want to leave him, just wants to vent endlessly. My other sister is also tired of this, but my mom says we need to be gentle because it's hard for Annie. I just want her to stop. I tried sympathy, tough love, changing the subject, suggesting counseling. Nothing works. It's nonstop. Jane did this and Jane did that. I hit my boiling point this morning when she was going on about how Jane's fiance would cheat because she's too fat. She's pregnant. Then she said, "I don't care because I won and she lost. She had him for a week and I have him for a lifetime." For some reason, that made me snap. I told Annie she, won, a slimy serial cheater who never supported her through illness or depression, never lifts a finger around the house, sulks about having to babysit his own kids, constantly makes mean jokes about her, and criticizes her appearance harshly, even though he's below average in looks. I said something like, "Maybe you're obsessed with Jane's life because yours is a massive dumpster fire." Since then, I had to deactivate my socials because I'm getting nonstop hate from Annie, her friends, and extended family for being cruel. Apparently, I have no morals and condone cheating. None of them are going for the actual cheater though, just me for pointing out that he's a cheater. My other sister says that I wasn't wrong, but I was the jerk to say it so harshly, and that Annie is a victim too. I don't know, Reddit. Am I the jerk? Edit. Thanks for all the comments and awards and advice. Sorry I can't reply to everyone. I'll keep suggesting therapy to Annie, and I'll track down Jane's social and let her know what's up. If anything happens from that, I'll let you know. Some people have suggested I show this thread to Annie, but I know she'll totally explode if she thinks I shared her private stuff online, even anonymously. Not the jerk. Your sister is obsessed with someone who her husband cheated on her with, broke up with said husband when she found out about him still being married, and has since moved on. What your sister needs is professional help. OP. I wish she would agree to therapy, but she won't. She doesn't think she needs it. Might I suggest you contact Jane and tell her to put her accounts on private because of Annie stalking her. It's borderline creepy, and she's upset about this baby that isn't even born yet. OP. Do you think she'll find it kind of sus if I reach out to her out of nowhere to tell her my sister is stalking her? She might, but she also might appreciate it. 50-50 chance. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. We get what we settle for in life. Never settle for a cheater. Karen rebranded gifts I bought my nephews as being from Santa. This happened during Christmas last year. My older sister has always been a handful, one might say. She would generally act entitled, but then when someone makes her back off, she goes back to acting normal for a while before starting it all over. She got married a decade ago and has 2 young sons that are 5 and 6. And every year she makes sure there's something extra under the tree from Santa for them, which we're all fine with. But Christmas of 2021, she did something that blew my mind. The Christmas Eve gatherings with the whole family are usually held at my grandparents' house. That way, the individual families have their personal celebrations on Christmas Day with their own kids or with families of significant others or spouses. Last year, I was worried I might not make it to the Christmas Eve party as I was away on some personal matters. So I shipped the presents I got for relatives pre-wrapped in a large box to my grandparents' house just in case. But I did manage to make it home the day before Christmas Eve by driving through several states. Everything went well, and we had the big dinner with both turkey and ham. I'm a real sucker for the turkey. Then came time for gifts. We draw strings for who passes around the gifts among the younger members of the family, and my 15-year-old cousin pulled the short straw. Everything was good until the presents I got from my nephews were passed to him. All the presents I sent in advance used the same wrapping paper, so it was pretty obvious after a while which ones were from me. But when the two boys got the ones I gave them, my sister pointed to new name labels on them both that were clearly pasted over the ones I'd put on them and exclaimed that they were from Santa, which made the two boys eagerly open them and shout with glee. I was pretty angry, and my sister saw it on my face. She pulled me aside to talk, and I asked her what the heck she thought she was doing. She beat around the bush for a moment and said that since she thought I wasn't going to make it to the Christmas that year, that it would have been better if the kids thought the gifts were from Santa. I was furious and yelled at her. That caught the attention of my grandmother, who also knew what happened. She begged me to keep quiet about the false Santa gifts, but I blew up over her wanting to rug sweep, and that attracted half the family into the kitchen to ask what all the yelling was about. My sister tried to say something, but I spoke over her that she had rebranded the gifts I got from my nephews as being from Santa. My grandfather looked at her and said, "Is this true?" My sister looked emotional and then did what she usually did when called out on something this bad. She started sobbing like a little kid and crouched down on the floor to have a pity party. Between sobs, she kept trying to defend herself, but the only one that was buying into her act was my grandmother, who only made more excuses like what my sister said. They thought I wasn't going to be there. It was for the sake of the kids, etc. My grandfather was unfazed though, and he, along with several other members of the family, said that she needed to make it up to me for this, because that means the boys technically got nothing from me that they know of when I clearly gave them nice expensive gifts that now they won't even know came from me just because of what my sister did. My grandmother finally backed off and briefly sided with the rest of us before going out to the living room to watch the kids. I then had an idea and said that I will give each of my nephews $50 bills from my wallet, and I expect to be paid that money back and get paid back for the gifts that were no longer for me because my sister had commandeered them. My brother-in-law sighed and agreed, then dragged my sister to the garage to have words with her. I gave my nephews each a crisp $50 bill and told them to buy whatever they like with it. My sister spent the rest of the evening almost silent. No more tears or anything, just silent. She may as well have been a mannequin on display or something. And before I left, my brother-in-law promised my sister will personally pay me back. I thought I was going to have to wait a good while to get the money back, but yesterday my sister and brother-in-law came knocking at my door, and my sister meekly handed me an envelope with $200 in it and apologized to me. She started to make more excuses for what she did when brother-in-law told her to just stop, because what she did was a crummy thing and she knows there was no excuse for it. So she just apologized one more time and walked back to their car, loudly sniffling in a tissue. My brother-in-law told me the $200 came out of my sister's account, and that was basically her fun money for this month, and maybe having a leaner month will teach her a lesson. Probably not though. Edit. Sorry I forgot to include my gender in this. I'm a guy in my early 30s. Good for you, and good for brother-in-law to take it out of her fun money. OP. It should teach her not to do something like rebranding gifts from someone else again, but I doubt she'll change. She used to take credit for stuff she didn't do a lot, which is why all of the family knows that she's like this. Did your brother-in-law know what he was signing up for when he married your sister? Because it sounds like he has to parent her along with 2 actual kids. It seems like she likely doesn't have a job, so her contribution is what exactly? Being a crappy person and embarrassing herself and her spouse in front of others? It's also interesting how your brother-in-law says it was taken out of her fun money, like she's a kid who receives a chore allowance from their parents. Is he sick of her crap? I'm always curious and baffled why seemingly responsible, mature adults get involved with and marry adult kids. OP. My sister put up quite the act when she was dating brother-in-law before they got married. About a year after they were married, she let her real self out, and as soon as she was pregnant, she quit her job and just sponged off her husband. Thankfully, the lot of us convinced him to get a signed prenup before marrying my sister, and that mostly keeps my sister in line, because with that prenup, if he ever divorces her, she'd be done out of everything but child support, and she knows it. I know he'd leave her in a heartbeat if she ever had an affair, as he openly says that cheating is a deal breaker. After the incident with the credit cards, brother-in-law watches their credit a lot, so she can't open a new one without him knowing. The marriage is already on thin ice, and we really don't know how long it'll last. Brother-in-law seems to still love my sister in some way, but he doesn't give her everything she wants, which she initially tried to do. The past decade, he's been gradually unentitling her. She went crying to everyone at one point that he was being financially controlling towards her by not letting her use credit cards in his name. But we all sided with brother-in-law on that, even my enabling grandmother. Brother-in-law has also made it clear that when the kids are old enough to not need to be babysat anymore, my sister will be made to get a job again, and he's even been mulling over the idea of finding my sister a job she can do from home and watch the kids, which I think is a good idea. If you want the promotion, you'll have to be willing to work without the benefits. The entry-level position at my old company is a revolving door. The pay is low, the work is unrewarding, and the expectations are unattainably high for the vast majority of the staff. The average time in that position is 6 months. This is by design. It's a position that requires minimal training, and there are plenty of applicants willing to work for minimum wage. It's actually a really great entry into the field and uses all of the industry standard practices and tools. Most people use it as a launching point for a successful career and move on to a higher paying job after half a year. One of the cool things about the position is that they offer a great perk for paid time off. You get 1 hour of paid time off for every 30 hours worked. There are no caps on accrual or limits on usage. It's a great way to attract recent college grads to the position. They feel like they're getting a great benefit, and the company knows that they'll be gone in 6 months anyways, so they don't even end up paying for a lot of time off. I took the job fully expecting to be gone within a year, but I ended up thriving in the position. My bosses were impressed, and they offered me raises if I would stay with the company and increase my scope of responsibility. Every time I started to think that my career was stagnating, they would make staying in that position worth it. After a couple of years, I had learned enough that I felt confident in my ability to take on a mid-level role, so I asked for consideration. The mid-level role comes with benefits and a salary, along with a title that would look great on my resume. The drawback was that this position has a cap of 4 days of paid time off usage per year. Still, it would be a great stepping stone in my career, so I was eager to move up. The only problem is that the mid-level position hires from a pool of candidates with an MBA, which I don't have. My boss told me they would love to have me work on that team and would give me a good raise, but I wouldn't get the title, salary, or benefits without an MBA. Works for me. I know how to write a resume and present myself in an interview, so the title is meaningless as long as I'm doing the work of that role. The pay increase would be great leverage while I searched for a new job. And I don't need the benefits. I don't need to be on the company's healthcare plan because I get free healthcare from the VA. I don't need their 401k plan because my wife's company has a better one. I don't need their student loan repayment benefits because the GI Bill paid for my degree. So I took the promotion, but I kept my original title. I don't think they realized this means I would also keep my original PTO structure, and at the new pay rate, giving me that much PTO would be kind of expensive. After about a year in that position, I was ready to move on. I told my boss I wanted to use all of my available paid time off, and he said, "No problem, enjoy your 4 days." No, you don't understand. I'm still an entry-level job title. I'm off for the next 6 weeks. I actually did take a month off and had a great time. Then I started job hunting full-time and quickly got offers. When my paid time off was over, I came back to the company with my 2 weeks notice. The timing was bad for the company because they didn't plan on spending that much on paid time off that quarter. I hope they've revisited their decision to tell me that I was capable of doing a job, but not qualified for the benefits of that job. Am I the jerk for refusing to watch my sister's stepkid and exposing her lies to her husband? I'm female 21. My sister, Jess, who's 30, is married and has a 5-year-old stepson. Her husband works full-time and she's a stay-at-home mom. Every Monday, she'd call my mom at 9 a.m. to get her to go over to her house and watch her stepkid for a few hours. I live at home with my parents, and so I've noticed this routine for weeks now. Last week, Mom went out of town to visit some relatives, and yesterday, Monday, at 9 a.m., my sister called me asking me to come over to watch her stepkid for a few hours because she had an important thing to do. I said no because I had to go study, and also she does this every Monday, so clearly it wasn't important or urgent, but she insisted that it was. I told her sorry, but no. She ended the call then, and I went to the university. Hours later, I got a call from my brother-in-law asking me where my sister was. I said I had no idea. He proceeded to tell me he just came home at 1 p.m. and found his son by himself at the house. I was in shock that my sister left her stepkid by himself so she could go who knows where. I told him about the conversation I had with her, and he got angry. In the evening, my sister came over and started making a scene by yelling at me for bailing on her after she sent me a text message telling me she was already out of the house to force me to come watch her kid. I didn't see the Facebook message till she told me, but she said I did this deliberately and also exposed her to her husband because she told him she'd be at home with the kid. Not just that, but I also told her husband that Mom comes over every Monday morning to watch the kid for a few hours, which caused a huge fight between him and my sister. She yelled that I was petty and selfish and just stirred crap and caused issues in her marriage by tattling to her husband. I couldn't keep arguing. I went into my room and started playing music. My dad and the others said I was to blame for not helping my sister and now being the reason she and her husband are in conflict. Am I the jerk? Okay guys, so I saw a few questions asked multiple times, so I'll just put the answers out here for all to see. Edit. Brother-in-law is always at work when my sister calls my mom to come over and watch her kid. Most of you guys are asking where my sister goes every Monday, and I even saw someone mention that I was the jerk for not finding out. But I don't know anything. I have no idea what's going on with my sister, and I thought it was none of my business. Not the jerk. This is bonkers. She left a 5-year-old alone, counting on a messaging app on a social network and your sense of concern for her kid to make sure her responsibilities were covered. I don't think going out one morning a week is a problem for a stay-at-home mom, but lying to your husband about it and forcing your relatives to cover it? No, sir. Not the jerk. I hope her husband questions her on what exactly she does and where she goes when she's supposed to be watching the kid. That's really sketchy. It sounds like she just wants to spend some quality time with her boyfriend. Bag of nails. I'm a dry liner, which means I do a lot of moving around for my trade, as most of the work I do is towards the end of most projects. This means that I spend a lot of my time renting flats and houses for only short periods of time, usually about 6 months at a time. This has meant that I have had to deal with a lot of landlords over the years, both good and bad. When it comes to the bad landlords, I will normally just walk away and get on with moving to the next job and take the loss of my deposit and never use them again if I'm working in that area in the future. But this particular landlord got my back up so badly, I was not just going to just walk away. I had managed to get myself into a big job in London working on the new Wembley Stadium, so decided I would look for a house to rent rather than a flat, as I knew I was going to be working on it for a while, and found a reasonably priced, for London, house to rent from a private landlord in a local newspaper. I gave him a call and met with him later that day. He seemed okay, went to view the house, paid him the deposit, cash, and moved in that weekend. I ended up staying in the house for nearly a year with no problems. Always had the rent paid into his bank account on time and fixed any small problems that might crop up with the house myself without bothering him. Up to the time when it came to moving out, only ever spoke to him twice on the phone after there was an issue with the heater that I was unable to fix myself, and he sent an engineer around the next day to fix the boiler. Come the time that the job was finishing, I went round to the pawn shop that he owned to give him notice that I would be moving out the following month and to let him know I was happy for him to come around to inspect the house before I moved out so that I could get my deposit back from him when I returned the keys. He never came around while I was in to inspect the house, and so I assumed that he had come around and let himself in while I was at work, as I had told him that I had no issue with him doing that if need be. So on the day I moved out, I went around the shop and handed him his keys back and asked for my deposit. His response was, "What deposit?" "The month's rent that I gave you in advance of moving in as a security deposit," I replied. He then told me he was keeping that to cover the cost of repairing damages caused while I was living in the property. I responded, "What damages?" With the bits of work and decorating I had done in the house, it was in better state now than it was when I had moved into it. His response was to step forward and get right up into my face and say, "You're not getting it back, so buzz off." And he then gave me a shove, which needed me to take 3 steps back to avoid falling down. Now, I'm what you would class an average size and build, and this landlord had a good 4 inches on me height-wise and obviously spent some time down at the gym, and the wise move would be to back away and cut my losses. Now, before I was a builder, I was a member of the British Army in a regiment called the Royal Green Jackets, and they had trained us the best way to proceed when confronted with aggression is to meet it swiftly and with much more violent aggression. So without even thinking about it, I started to move forward with the full intention of dropping this guy quickly and painfully. After the first step though, a thought popped into my head like a bolt from the blue. So I stopped and took a moment to examine the idea from a few different angles, said, "Okay, bye," to my now ex-landlord and walked out of his shop. What the landlord did not know was that I had a spare back door key cut when I lived in the house, which I had stashed in my van in case I ever lost the keys so I could still get back in. So later that evening, I let myself back in and decided to stop for one last night before leaving in the morning for my next job, which was in Scotland. I spent the last night in the house, carefully removing every bit of wood in there. I took down doors, removed skirting boards, banisters, and floorboards, being extremely careful not to damage anything. I also completely dismantled all the kitchen units, took up the wood flooring and carpets. I then left everything in neat piles in each room. I got in my van the next morning and was preparing to start my drive when I decided I wanted to rub a little bit of more salt into my ex-landlord's wounds. So I stopped at his shop on the way out of London, got a spare hammer, screwdriver, bag of nails, and a box of wood screws out of the back of my van and went into the shop. My ex-landlord was not there, probably for the best. So I left the tools with his confused-looking assistant and told her to tell her boss, "You will be needing these," and left for my drive north. I had my phone switched off while driving, and a few hours later, while I was having a bite to eat at a service station up by Nottingham, I decided to switch it back on and was greeted by a string of text messages and some very colorful voice messages, which left me chuckling to myself. Edit. I did reply to one of the texts he sent me. The text was, "Do you think you're funny, leaving me nails and screws?" I responded, "Yes." Am I the jerk for telling my roommate her mom can't stay at our apartment? Me, 25 female, and my roommate, 25 female, have been living together for almost 6 months now. We're both nurses, work in different hospitals, and have been friends since nursing school 5-ish years ago. For some background, I have 2 sisters and I'm the youngest in our family. My mom divorced my dad and left our family when I was 2 years old. My dad is amazing and became the best single dad in the world. Was both dad and mom for his 3 daughters. He's literally my best friend. Anyway, my dad, 67, male, lives 2 hours away now. In October, I had a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off in a row. I missed my dad a lot and told him I was coming home to see him. He said he'd love to see me, but asked if he could come to where I live since he had some friends and wanted to see as well. I said of course. I told my roommate he was coming to visit for the weekend, and she said, "Cool, is he staying at the hotel?" Which is a hotel close by. I said, "Well, I thought he could stay here. He can stay in my room and I'll sleep on an air mattress on my floor." She basically said she thought he should stay in a hotel. I figured she didn't want the apartment cramped. We've never had guests stay for that long, and my dad said he didn't mind. So the 2 of us stayed at the hotel for the weekend. Fast forward to now. My friend informed me that her mom is coming to visit and is planning on staying a week at our apartment. I was confused and said, "She's not staying at the hotel?" And she pretty much said what I told her about how I planned for my dad to stay. I called her out on it and said that my dad was only coming for 2 nights and she didn't want him here, and that her mom is staying for a week. She told me that having my dad stay and having her mom stay are completely different because she's a woman and he was a man. I got really upset with her statement. My dad has always been so nice and welcoming to her. He and I will meet halfway for dinner once a month, and my roommate has gone with us on several occasions. I got really upset with my roommate and told her that I didn't want her mom to stay at our apartment and she needed to stay at the hotel like my dad had to do. My roommate is now mad at me, but I feel like I'm justified in being upset at the double standards. Am I the jerk? Edit 1. We've both had male guests come and stay before. We've always been respectful and let each other know when they were staying over. That's never been an issue. Edit 2. When she said no to my dad staying, she never mentioned it was because he was a man. She said that our apartment would be cramped and that she had to work on some of those days and had to go to sleep early and wake up early. Only mentioned it was because he was a male when I called her out on it when she told me her mom was staying. Thanks so much for everyone's input. Not the jerk. If the rule is no air mattress campouts, then no air mattress campouts. Mom can stay in a hotel. Demote me for daring to take professional obligations seriously? Are you sure about that? I had been working contentedly for a local clinic in administrative capacity. I was hired on as a medical biller originally, but over time my duties expanded into more information management and upper-level administration, and everyone from the CEO to the most junior employee knew I was good at my job. I didn't brag, but my work spoke for me. One of the certifying organization's motto for billers is upholding a higher standard, and I was doing my best to abide by it. Things were perking along, and then the clinic merged with a larger group of clinics, and they had a centralized billing office. I was on site more often than not, and knew clinic operations backwards and forwards as I was functioning as the de facto manager. As the merger took effect, I realized that I did not mix with the central office at all. They were rude and cliquey, and apparently it was known, but nothing was ever done about it. When I refused an order to commit a fraudulent act, the next day I was out all morning for an important doctor's appointment. I came back to a new set of job duties, all front desk. This was during lockdown, and it was institutional knowledge. I work front desk during flu season. I get sick with the flu 2 to 3 days later, no matter how many precautions I take. I was beyond peeved because it was effectively a demotion, and when I spoke with the manager, she said flat out, "You are now front desk and bound by the expectations of such." Okay, demote me for acting honorably and placing me in harm's way? That can't go unanswered. I was beyond furious, but I had a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of unofficial duties. If they were going to put me on front desk and be bound by that set of expectations, then I was going to give them a master's class on work to rule. This change in position was not communicated to the clinic manager, and when I told him, he said, "What are they thinking?" But he didn't have enough work for me as a front desk person, so I spent my days job searching on the clock. Not something I would recommend, but it was either that or be bored out of my skull all day long. But every time I was asked a billing question, I said, "I'm not the biller. You need to take it up with the central billing office." After a few weeks, central billing office caught on as I was adding more work back onto them and tried to give me a few tasks back. I used a customer service rule to argue against it, and they had to admit I had a point. When the original CEO found out what was going on, he called it a waste. I suspect words were said, and I got a larger portion of my job back in an hour. So not only did I give them a well-deserved education on why one does not mess with a good employee, and rumor is they still haven't learned or don't care to learn, but I also got paid to job hunt for my next position. Karen demands I hire a nanny to watch her baby so she can go party. My daughter, 17 female, has a 1-year-old daughter. The father is not around. We sued for child support and won, but he has never paid a dime. It was very important to not only my daughter, but myself and her mother that she finish high school, then go to college. Therefore, we made a deal. We will cover childcare expenses and everything related to the child, diapers, clothes, insurance, etc., until she graduates from college. In exchange, our daughter will focus on school and care for her daughter when she is home. Due to lockdown concerns, my wife and I have decided that a nanny would be better versus putting her in daycare exposed to the other kids. The nanny is a very sweet woman who in the past has offered to watch our granddaughter extra hours. We always tell her that won't be necessary. My daughter usually leaves for school right before the nanny arrives, so I stay with my granddaughter for 10 minutes. Today, when the nanny came, we were talking about potential bad weather that might close the roads for tomorrow. As she doesn't work Fridays, my wife is home and watches the baby. I said I'd pay her for the week now, including a full day for Thursday. She said we could just pay her on Saturday. I was confused, and she said my daughter had asked her to work. I told her, 1, my daughter did not hire her. She doesn't choose the hours, we do. 2, unless our daughter needs to study or something, we won't be needing her. I waited until my daughter came home to talk to her about it. She said that her friends were going to a party. She feels overwhelmed from school and caring for a baby. I told her I understood, but this was our deal. She started to cry and said that all her life is school and baby. I hugged her, told her that this was the bed she made and she was lucky to have the arrangement she does. If she wants to earn her own money, she can get a part-time job and pay for childcare in her free time. That just made her more upset. My wife agrees with me, but our daughter is very upset and thinks we should just cave just this once. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This may be unpopular, but I agree with you and your wife. What clinched this was that she went behind your back on this. She might have asked you about having a night off to have fun. That's a reasonable request, but she didn't. She tried to sneak one by you. 17 and the mother of a 1-year-old, she still has a lot of growing up to do. Adults talk and tell each other what's going on. She's a child raising a child. Talk to her, work out something so she gets to be a teenager at least once or twice a month. These are not easy times we're in. I agree, not the jerk at all. She made the choice to have a kid and now she's stuck with the consequences. Don't like not being able to go party, where there's likely going to be drinking going on that shouldn't be? Sucks, friend. You're a mom now. Moms have to put their child first, no matter what. She's also getting free childcare while she goes to school and doesn't work, which most young parents would do anything for. She's being ungrateful, especially because she's gone behind her parents' backs to get what she wants. Moms have to put their child first, no matter what? I don't think that's true. I'm a mom, and occasionally I'm allowed to do things for myself. Always putting my kids, and my husband, first doesn't make me the best parent I can be. If all this poor girl is doing is school and parenting, and she is as burnt out as she says she can't be a very good mom to her kid. I'm not saying what she did was right, but she deserves a break or she will literally break. And honestly, I think it's crappy for OP to tell the daughter if she wants to have any free time, she has to get a job to earn money to pay for childcare. The daughter would probably make less than a nanny, so how can she earn enough to pay for the nanny while she works and save enough to pay her so she can go out too? Or was OP offering to pay the nanny while the daughter works? It didn't sound like it, so OP wasn't offering a realistic solution, i.e., the daughter will never be able to do anything other than study and parent. I think it sounds like the daughter is being punished for having the baby, but being told she is lucky. Gaslighting at its finest. Parents don't get a night off. Didn't that Dayquil commercial teach you anything? The problem with this setup is that she needs to grow up. Yeah, she's a kid. Boo-hoo. Well, she's a kid who decided to keep a kid. It ain't all teen moms, honey. It's hard work, and sometimes you miss parties, especially if you don't communicate. Imagine if this girl had said, "Hey mom, Susie is having a party on Saturday. Can you watch the baby? Or can you pay Nanny to watch the baby?" It would have been way different. Teaching responsibility is part of parenting. That's all this dad is trying to do. Parents get nights, or at least hours and time off all the time. Grandparents take them. Spouse has them while the other goes out. Family babysits, friends watch kids, etc. Now, she's 17, and some of these aren't available, and etc. But to say parents don't get time off as a blanket statement is dumb. She's always a parent, but most parents once or twice a month will get some child free time, and this is better for their kid because burnt out and sanity management is real. 100% she should have communicated and not gone behind her own parents' backs though. She's not actually always a parent. Her parents are kind enough to let her focus on studies, so she is free of her baby for quite a while every day. Yeah, WTF, as if no socializing occurs at high school. This daughter has about the best possible arrangement here for a teen parent who insists on keeping the baby. Imagine what it's like for so many others without wealthy parents. OP is being extremely reasonable. I get the impression that they'll work with her on important stuff like prom too. To portray this as though she's suffering from anything but her own choice is asinine. You don't teach responsibility by burning out a kid. She messed up. Big deal. Now she's acting according to the deal. But she's still a kid. Do we really want to read about something bad happening to that baby because the mom was depressed and didn't see a way out? Just because she has it good doesn't mean it's not heavy on her teenage mind. It's a situation that messes up adults. Imagine kids. Yeah, this time she doesn't get to go to the party because she went behind her parents' back, but using maternity as a punishment isn't going to get anyone far. I agree with not the jerk, but the line, "This is your bed, now you lie in it," is a bit harsh. I mean, your daughter is practically a baby and made a bad choice. Maybe offer her another way to pay back for a night out with friends, and I agree that sneaking out is a bit shady. In general, it seems that you are hostile to the baby. Not the jerk. You're being very kind, supportive, and reasonable here. She's lucky to have such an arrangement, but she's also still a teenager who, yes, has to suffer the consequences, for lack of a better term. I'm sure the kid is much loved, but will need fun on occasion, or her kid might suffer too. She's still a kid herself, despite the very grown moment of having a baby. Maybe if she has one night a month or something and scheduled ahead, you could come up to an agreement. Not the jerk. She's lucky her life is school and baby, and not job and baby, or welfare and baby. That being said, if she had come to you first and asked you or her mother to babysit, then maybe you would have done so as a one-off. Pretty common for the grandparents to do that on occasion, even for a teen mom who has made her bed to lie in. She went way out of line by asking the nanny to do this behind your back. I can see your side of things, but you really need to remember that she's still a kid herself. She's taking the best possible path forwards by being responsible and finishing school with plans to go to college. Outside looking in, that's huge. I've got a teenager that's in the same age range, and personally, if this were my kid, I wouldn't be caving in this time because it gives the impression that I can be pressured into giving in. But I'd definitely be making sure that they got a chance to be a kid every now and then. She's only a kid once, and though she's made some massively life-altering decisions, it would be wrong to completely deny her the opportunity to be a teenager while she still has the chance. 50-50. You're not the jerk yet, but you could easily become the jerk. Everyone sucks here. I don't agree with how your daughter handled it, but I will say I do think that your daughter still needs some time every once in a while to have some me time. I think a lot of people get so hung up over their ideas for young mothers that they use the resulting kid as a punishment and completely forget that we tell older, married, settled, etc. mothers that it's okay for them to take time to themselves. If all your daughter does is literally care for her kid in school, she's going to burn out. She still needs to be allowed to practice some self-care and to be an individual. The child shouldn't be a punishment, and I think this course of action is just going to breed resentment all around in the long term. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know.
Bruh, let her go to that party. Maybe you'll be lucky enough to get a second grandkid.
My wife, a stay-at-home mom, constantly expects appreciation from me. I, 36 male, work full-time, and my wife, 32 female, is a stay-at-home mom looking after our 2-year-old twins. When we got married, we both agreed that my wife would be a stay-at-home mom, especially since we don't have any family or grandparents nearby. We were both in agreement, and my wife made it clear she wanted to enjoy seeing our kids grow up. We don't plan on having any more. I make a good wage, so we are comfortable. I don't give my wife any spending limits. Obviously, we discuss big purchases, so she's free to buy herself things. I make sure she has access to money, and she takes care of everything around the house. I work from home, and a typical day for me is 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Once I finish work, I go and spend time with the twins while my wife makes dinner. We put them to bed together, and my wife usually cleans up the kitchen. She's great at her job, and the house is spotless. I'm happy with this arrangement, and I thought my wife was too. Recently, she's been coming to me and saying that she feels burned out, unappreciated, and taken for granted. I asked if I could do anything to help, and she said that it would be nice if I did something now and again to show that I appreciated her, like buying her favorite bar of chocolate when I go to the shop or something small, just as a gesture of appreciation. I'll admit that I didn't do this, purely because I am not in the habit, to be honest. We recently had a massive argument because my wife got completely fed up with being treated like a servant. She basically said that her working hours are 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week, and that she feels like I take her for granted. I told her that I understand it's a tough job, but we both get on with our respective roles. I never ask her to thank me for making money. I think that's cringeworthy. I get on with my job because I have to provide for my family, whereas she wants presents and treats for doing her job. I essentially said this to her, and now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk. Looking after kids in the house is tiring, and she does work hard to take care of everything. But at the same time, do I need to thank her on a bended knee and buy her things just for doing her job? Am I the jerk? Edit. Okay, you can all stop tearing me a new one. I get it. I do get to relax on the weekend, whereas my wife usually does her normal routine and gets on top of the cleaning, etc. Just for the record, I do thank her for everything she does. I say thank you all the time, but I understand that this may not be her love language. You're the jerk. Is it really too much for your wife to ask that you occasionally buy her a bar of chocolate or say thank you? It sounds like she's working harder than you, but that isn't even the point. Appreciating her and showing her you love her is part of being a decent husband. If you're a robot who doesn't need appreciation, that doesn't mean she has to be too. You're the jerk. I have 3-year-old twins and a new baby. I've been a mother every waking and sleeping minute of the day for just over 3 years, not including a 9-month pregnancy with 2 babies that equal 9 months of illness, sickness, and a broken body. Your wife is working all the time. You get to clock off at 5, and you don't even have to travel to work. Your wife not only keeps 2 small humans alive, your wife not only keeps your house in excellent condition, your wife not only cooks and keeps on top of food prep and buying, etc. Your wife not only drives everywhere to get things done, but she does this every day for 2 years without asking for anything from you. Then the moment she does, the moment she opens up to you about how she feels, you dismiss her feelings and tell her you won't even help her feel a little appreciated? Well, newsflash, you get the feeling of appreciation. A job done every time you make money, every time you please coworkers or clients, every day you keep your job. 2-year-olds cry and complain and eat and cry and laugh. No one stops to tell her or even gesture that your wife is a superhero like every stay-at-home parent. Buy her a chocolate bar and some flowers, then use them to knock some sense into yourself. Edit to add. If you're a stay-at-home parent and you read this comment and say you don't agree because you feel appreciated by your kids as infants, then that's great. Really, it is. But this woman doesn't, and she opened up to her husband about her feelings, and he dismissed them. He says she shouldn't need a treat, as if she's a dog, a performing dog. You're the jerk, dude. I'm a stay-at-home wife too. I'd be single if my husband treated me like this, especially because I'm running an entire farm on my own while he's at work. From the title, I was expecting her demanding way more than an occasional candy bar and some verbal affirmation. This man is married to an absolute sweetheart, and he doesn't see it. I'm not a stay-at-home mom, and my husband brings me chocolate bars all the time. It's not that hard. I've spent periods functioning as a stay-at-home mom, summers, and periods working full-time. Being a stay-at-home mom isn't necessarily harder, but it's a different kind of hard. It's isolating in a way that's hard to shake. At work, when I do something well, I get a high five from a coworker, or I get a student telling me something was helpful. Parenting toddlers, they don't and can't do that because they're babies. Their whole life experience is based on meeting their needs and wants. It's grinding and mentally hard, and your wife is parenting twins and keeping the house really clean? She's a rock star and deserves way more than cards and chocolate. My house was a train wreck with one toddler and one preschooler. Please, OP, listen to her. She's isolated, probably lonely, working a repetitive job with two tiny people who are constantly trying to destroy the house and find creative ways to get hurt. Think about the hours you spend watching them. Imagine doing that while also cooking and cleaning. She does that all day, every day. I bet it would mean a whole lot to her for you to spend some time noticing and valuing what she does. Wow, spouse. Kid number 1 knows all of her colors now. You're doing a great job at this mom thing. Thanks for finding extra time to plan the twins' birthday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey spouse, I found a sitter free next Friday. Let's go out to dinner since we've both been working so hard. Just make her feel seen and appreciated. It goes a long way for a stay-at-home parent whose job can easily feel invisible. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
I'm feeling a little unappreciated myself, Reddit boy. King-size Twix, make it snappy.
Stepmom let my stepsister break my birthday present before I even got it. I, 14 male, really like steam trains, and my favorites are from Britain. My parents are divorced, and both my mom and dad got remarried. My stepmom has 2 daughters from another marriage, Kelly, who's 18, and Anne, who's 9. When I was 12, I started mowing lawns and walking dogs so I could get some money and start collecting models. Since there's so many different models out there and so many liveries, I decided to limit myself to preserved locomotives and the liveries they're preserved in and unique locomotives. This Christmas, my mom and stepdad surprised me with 4 out of the 6 preserved A4s, Mallard, Bittern, Union of South Africa, and Dominion of Canada. On my birthday, January 14th, I asked my mom, stepdad, dad, and stepmom for the remaining 2 A4s, Dwight D. Eisenhower and Sir Nigel Gresley, and my mom and stepdad got me Sir Nigel Gresley and the rebuilt W1. I went to my dad's the next day and saw my dad, stepmom, and stepsisters. I opened my gifts, and when I was done, my dad went and brought another bag out. I pulled out the tissue paper, and there was a model train inside. I pulled it out, but before I could look at it, the model fell out. I looked at the box, and the back was ripped out. I showed my dad, and he looked confused when stepmom chimed in.
Oh, Anne threw a tantrum, so I let her play with that last week.
I looked at the model, and the paint was all scratched, and the side rods were bent. One of the axles was cracked too. I was really upset that Anne did so much damage, and my stepmom just put it back into the box. I was upset since I didn't have much there, and the little bit of stuff I do have there, Anne's broken. I angrily asked, "Why do you let her break everything of mine?" And my stepmom said,
"Just get over it already."
I snapped and said, "I will when you stop letting Anne be so spoiled and start being a better parent." That ticked her off, and she called me an ungrateful jerk. I asked my dad to take me home, and he did. I talked to my dad a little on the ride home, and he said he would get me a replacement. He came with a replacement today after school with stepmom and Anne. I thanked them, and my dad made Anne apologize. I felt kind of awkward because I had nothing to talk about, so I asked if they wanted to watch me run it. They came to my room, and my stepmom saw the other 5 A4s and W1. The W1 got rebuilt with an A4 boiler, so they look similar, and started to flip out that I wasted their money, and she tried to take the model from me. My mom and stepdad came in before she could grab it and asked what happened, and my stepmom told them that I wasted their money because I already have models like the one they got me. My mom tried to explain that it looks similar because it's part of the same class, but my stepmom wasn't having it. My stepmom tried to grab it again, but my stepdad intervened and kicked them out. My stepmom started to make a scene, but my dad seemed embarrassed and quickly said, "Let's just go," and grabbed Anne and my stepmom's hands and pulled them to the car. This might sound bad, but you might have to limit your time with your dad if she doesn't change. and it's your dad's fault as he isn't stepping up and protecting you from her. And happy late birthday. OP, I think I do have to limit my time with him since he's not stepping up. And thank you. Am I the jerk for throwing a tantrum while pregnant? I'm 30 weeks pregnant, and I have a lot of appointments I have to go to, about 45 minutes away. My husband broke his leg over the holidays, and I've been told I'm not allowed to drive because of one of my complications, so we've been trying our best to manage with all of that. One thing we've been doing is paying a good friend of ours $50 and a homemade dinner to drive me to appointments. It's worked out really well. I casually mentioned it to my mom, and she threw a fit and said she would drive me. I declined as I was comfortable with the arrangement with our friend. Well, last week, my mom knew I had an appointment, so she, coincidentally, came to drop some stuff off. I really don't like when she comes by unannounced, so I was a bit annoyed right before and insisted on driving me. It felt a bit diva-ish to ask our friend to still come when she was there and willing, so I agreed. We were almost late because she insisted on stopping for Starbucks in the city. I got bad news in the appointment, and she just complained about how bored she had been. People can't join me for these appointments. It's a clinic rule. She made 5 different stops to shop while I sat in the car just wanting to get home to process the news and lay down. I said this to her multiple times, but it was, "Oh, just one thing, just one thing." Then she said she wanted to stop at a friend's house because they wanted to see me. I snapped at her. I told her absolutely not, and I needed to be home now. She was quiet the rest of the drive, and as we were getting close to my house, she said, "Well, if we don't do things for family, maybe I'll cancel my flight and not come help you the week the baby is born." I was stunned. She's going to her place out of the country soon, and I specifically told her we wanted 2 weeks minimum on our own with the baby. I didn't know about this flight. She booked the flight the week I'm supposed to deliver without consulting me. She won't have a place here then either, because she does this kind of timeshare rotate, so she was just assuming she'd stay with us. I lost it. I told her there would be no space for her, as I'd asked my mother-in-law to be there the first few weeks leading up to labor, and then she would be leaving the day we got home to give us our 2-week period, so she needs to find somewhere else to stay. She yelled at me about what a traitor I was to have asked my husband's mom and not her. I told her this whole day was another example of why that was the case. Don't even get me started on the international travel side of things. We were about 15 minutes from my place at the time, so she told me to get out of the car and left. I walked the rest of the way home sobbing, and now my sisters and aunts have all messaged me about how I need to apologize to my mother and how I was throwing a tantrum and being unkind. Am I the jerk? ETA. Wow, I wasn't expecting so many comments, but thank you everyone for the input and support. I really appreciate the perspective, even the "you're the jerks." I'm reading through all the comments and wish I could reply to everyone, but just wanted to say thank you. And also, thanks for my first award. I'm going to sleep on it and come up with a game plan in the morning, but I'm really realizing behavior I've kind of come to accept as normal is pretty inexcusable, and I don't want that around my baby. So I will be planning on going low contact or no contact strategies until things improve. Also, for those worried, to clarify, the walk was 15 minutes, luckily, not a 15-minute drive with a much longer walk, and I still am encouraged to do light activity for now. So while it sucked, and obviously unplanned sad walks are awful, it wasn't too damaging. Not the jerk. Mom was way out of line with just about everything. Yeah, OP, your mother is unable to consider your needs above her own, or even as equal to her own. You're dealing with a lot. A pregnancy with no complications is tough enough on its own, and you deserve to be surrounded by people who support you and care for you. Part of supporting and caring for someone is doing it in the fashion they request, not forcing yourself into the situation, by the way. Do not let anyone suggest that you owe your mother anything. Your pregnancy and your baby are not about her, no matter what she says. Do not hesitate to cut her off and anyone else who so readily and blatantly demonstrates that they do not care at all about your best interests. Not the jerk, and the best of luck moving forward. She left a pregnant woman in the middle of the road that was 15 minutes. Not sure if that's walking or driving, but still, not the jerk. And next time, OP, when you talk to your sister and aunt, just ask them if that is okay, just because you didn't give in to her overbearing demands. I was ready to call her mom the jerk as soon as I heard she stopped by accidentally and pushed the whole "I'm driving you" thing. With every new paragraph, I was thinking, wow, how annoying she is. But then, things got a whole other meaning. From being pushy, inconsiderate, and without boundaries, she became malicious and evil. She's a narcissist, and she may very well put her grandchild's life in danger. Her pregnancy has complications. She just received bad news. She was already under stress, which is bad, but then her own mother throws her out of the car to walk for 15 minutes while sobbing. Goodness, the rage I'm feeling. Just a question, whose car was it? Not that it matters, but if she lives overseas, does that mean she was driving OP's car? OP. Fortunately, it was her car. She does this thing where her and my ex-stepdad rotate between their place here and their place down south, so she keeps her car here, but still, a very crappy situation. Am I the jerk for charging my aunt and uncle to babysit my little cousins? So I, 18 female, routinely babysit for my aunt and uncle as they both work a lot. I currently babysit their kids, 2 1-year-olds and 1 8-year-old, 5 days a week from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. The older cousin is in school for most of those hours, so he's not so much trouble. I just need to pick him up and ensure he has dinner and does his homework, etc. But it's the twins that I'm primarily taking care of. I recently told my aunt and uncle that as this is severely cutting into my ability to look for a job and start making my own money, that I could only contribute if they paid me, and threw out a ballpark figure of 80 pounds a week, which is far less than I'd make in a full-time job and much cheaper than paying a stranger to take care of the kids. We are family after all, so I don't want to overcharge them. They also make good money, so this would be in no way hurting them. It seems, however, this was a mistake, as my aunt blew up about how entitled I am and how you don't charge family to babysit, and began to rattle off how I have free access to their Wi-Fi and their food, etc. I pointed out that taking care of 2 1-year-olds, I have basically no time to go on the Wi-Fi, and that I can't eat their food and have to bring my own as I'm vegan, and 90% of their stuff isn't compatible with that, which led to a huge argument. I was eventually told to get out. My aunt has now taken to social media to rant about how spoiled and entitled I am, and how she's not going to pay someone for the easy job of taking care of 2 babies who are basically no work, which is hilarious, as I can assure you the 2 1-year-olds are not easy to take care of. My parents are now up in arms over this, defending me, and my mom is not talking to her sister. I just feel awful for causing this family drama. Should I have just continued to do it for free? Not the jerk. Stop babysitting immediately. 12-hour days, 5 days a week, for free? She's crazy. Tell her you're not her slave. You're not even a babysitter. You're a full-blown nanny working overtime for free. Don't accept that 80 pounds when she changes her tune and realizes what real babysitting rates are. Get a job, earn a salary, live your life. ETA, I've lived in London. I bet they're going to the pub a few hours every day after work before coming home, leaving them virtually no time with their kids. These people are downright despicable. ETA again. Not one person here has rated you the jerk, not even the trolls. That should tell you something. Info. What do you want to do for a living? What's your life plan? What are your GCSEs in? Before you started working for free, what did you want to do with your life? You're at the age where you need to think about yourself, your future, your finances. Giving away your precious hours to a well-off couple that doesn't even appreciate them isn't the way to go. You'll look back and wish you'd furthered your own life instead of helping further theirs. Lastly, the concept of family is overrated. You're going out of your way to help your family. They're going out of their way to do you over. Your definition of family is vastly different from theirs. Genetic math? If you say so. When I was a sophomore in high school, our biology teacher gave us a genetic math assignment. We were to use our parents' blood types to determine our possible blood types and then confirm our work by typing our blood in class. This was before current biohazard practices. I'm adopted and knew its implications on the assignment, but my teacher didn't ask, and I was looking forward to having a little fun. He wasn't the worst teacher, but I didn't care for him. I'd been a blood donor, so I knew I was AB positive, and based on the assignment, that was not possible. Typing our blood involved pricking our finger, putting some on 3 separate glass sliders, and applying a drop of reactant on each slide. One reactant identified A, one B, and one positive and negative. Of course, all 3 indicated, so I showed the teacher my work with a confused look. Teacher, you've probably messed up with your test. Each reactant goes only on 1 slide. Me, yes sir, that's what I did. Teacher, well, something isn't quite right. Let's test again together. We test again, the result was the same. Teacher, I'm sorry, someone must have mixed all these reactants. Let's get new bottles and test again. So I prick my finger a third time. Same result. Now the teacher is getting a little nervous. He's stammering a bit. I just look at him, waiting to see what he'll say. At this point, it's worth noting my biology teacher had only one volume setting, loud. Any conversation he ever had with any student was clearly heard by the whole class. Teacher: do you perhaps have anyone you call Uncle who isn't really your father? Me: oh sure, Uncle Jim is really my second cousin, once removed on my mother's side. Teacher: no. I mean, does your mom have any close male friends besides your dad? Me: confused look. Teacher: so I guess what I'm trying to say, At this point, I'd had my fun. My teacher had beads of sweat on his brow and lip. I interrupted him. Oh, of course, I'm adopted. That was the last year he gave that assignment. Karen niece doesn't appreciate my gift. I teach her a valuable lesson. For the past few years, every time I buy my niece anything, she complains about it. She has expensive taste, and while I'm not broke, I certainly do not have the money to buy what she asks for. I've told her this in the past, along with her mother. Both seem to understand, but my niece will still get a "that's all" attitude about her. One year, I got her a gift card to her favorite clothing store. It wasn't enough to buy a full outfit from there, but it would get her a pair of jeans or a sweater or something. She said, "You expect me to be able to use this to buy something?" Another, I flat out gave her cash to put towards one of the items on our list, and I was told that it wasn't enough. So what was the point? She's 16 now. For her birthday in May, I sent her a gift card to a different store. When she called me to thank me, she said, "Thank you, even though this isn't enough to buy anything." I was pretty upset and told my sister I wasn't buying her daughter anything else. She said that wasn't fair because our brother's kids always get something to open on Christmas. Yeah, because his kids aren't ungrateful about the gifts. They understand I'm not the aunt that can spoil them, but they appreciate their small gifts. I still don't want to cause drama on Christmas. Every year, I always get a kid from one of those organizations to buy a gift for. This year, I selected two, one of them wanting something within the budget I set for my nieces and nephews. I bought the present in my niece's name and made a nice handmade card detailing that a gift to a less fortunate kid had been made in her name. We couldn't be together this year for Christmas because of lockdown, but we did a Zoom celebration with everyone. My niece opened her gift and freaked out. She said it wasn't fair, everyone else got a gift. I said, I figured this was something that was useful. She got even more upset, broke what my parents got her, and stormed out of the room. My family has called me a jerk for this. They said it would have been better to not get her anything at all. Am I a jerk? Karen is in love with my husband. I shut her down. Long story short, my husband has one of those female friends. I'll call her Sarah. Her and I get along fine, but every once in a while she'll make a comment or sit a little too close or touch him a lot or compete with me on how close they are or how well she knows him. She's one in a big group of about 11 friends. I've talked to my husband about her several times, but it's so many added up micro actions that it's hard to tell her off for one singular thing without looking crazy. Well, this past weekend, the group of friends got together for the very first time since we all now have our boosters. My husband and I eloped a few weeks ago, and this was the first time that most of us were seeing each other since. Sarah came up and got in our face as the group was congratulating us to tell my husband how disappointed she was in him for not telling her about our ceremony, not inviting her, not even sending her a photo. He told her nobody except our parents knew. Nobody was invited, and we don't have our professional photos back. This girl started sobbing. How could he do this to her? That she wanted him to be her man of honor when she gets married. She's single, and he didn't even invite her to his, and their friendship now needed some serious TLC to recover. This is in front of a whole group. I couldn't take it anymore and said, "He might be your best friend, but you're not his, and this was between me and him. You were not even a consideration." There were some frosty oohs from the crowd, and she left the house. The crowd is split. They were all my husband's friends before I came into the picture, and some think it was uncalled for, that I should have just let my husband handle it. I was mad in the moment, but now I don't know. Did I go too far? Not the jerk. She stepped over the line with her sobbing and demands publicly that she needs TLC? She's got a whole relationship in her head that may or may not exist, and your husband needs to draw that line in the sand. OP. Yeah, the TLC comment was what I think triggered me. The only tender thing I ask for of my friends is chicken. Not the jerk, but I'm curious as to why your husband hasn't distanced himself from someone who doesn't even respect your relationship. OP, they don't do things one-on-one anymore, but she's still within the main friend group, so it's hard to not have her around. He still needs to set boundaries. Her behavior was way out of line. She's honestly acting like your husband is either a fallback person for her or the one who got away. She needs to be shut down immediately, or you two need to be a united front about it. Honestly, your husband is just as to blame as his friend is. She keeps violating boundaries, and your husband keeps allowing it. You should be mad at him, especially since he hasn't done anything to stop this. He isn't an incompetent little kid. He knows what's going on and chooses to not cut her off despite you complaining about her behavior and that she obviously makes you uncomfortable. Unfriending someone isn't hard, and he should have done it a while ago with her. You shouldn't be fighting her. He should. Not the jerk, and I wish you could see how hard my eyes rolled reading this post. Talk about no boundaries. She's so transparently into your husband, it's almost painful. While you definitely could have let him handle her, you weren't out of line in the least. This girl needs to know where she stands, and that's well behind you. Nicely done. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the husband's friend? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook for my husband after what he said? I, female 30, live with my husband, male 35, and our 3 kids, who are 8, 5, and 2. I work as a freelance artist from home, and my husband works long hours driving. As a result, I do the majority of housework and look after our 3 kids. Though when he's off work and home, he takes on his fair share. Our lives mean that we don't have much free time. I enjoy cooking, and as a mom, I make sure to give my kids a wide variety of foods to eat. I want them to appreciate different cultures, flavors, and different types of cuisine from all around the world, and to grow up kind and respectful of others. So a few days a week, 3 out of 7, my kids and I cook together and make a recipe from another country. We all enjoy this, and it gives a perfect segue into learning about a foreign country. My husband, on the other hand, has a more plain palate and prefers simpler English dishes that he grew up with, such as pies, fish and chips, roast dinners, etc. We eat plenty of meals like this too. A week ago, we hired a babysitter and went to a friend's house for dinner. We've all been tested. They cooked a beautiful vegetarian pie with mashed potatoes and vegetables. My husband turned to them and said, "Finally, a decent meal for once. Pickle Pie Banana is always cooking these awful smelly dishes." Feeling hurt, I looked at my husband and asked him what he meant, and he said that he only puts up with it because he doesn't have time to cook something decent for himself. The meal was a little awkward after that, but neither of us brought it up again while there until we came home. I told him that I wouldn't stop cooking foreign food with the kids, and if he didn't like it, he would have to cook something for himself. He once again said that he didn't have time for that, and I should just cook him something he likes at the same time, which I refuse to do, mainly because when he comes home after work, he spends all his time, up until bedtime, gaming. This is around 4 to 4.5 hours of time after he comes in. He has plenty of time to cook a quick but decent meal for himself and enjoy his hobby. Once again this week, I cooked with my kids, and like I told my husband, I didn't leave him any. He was upset, but ordered takeout. The second time, he went around to his parents' house and his mom cooked for him. The next day, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law saying I was a jerk for not cooking for my husband, and that I spent all day doing my hobby, my actual job, and why shouldn't he enjoy his hobby? Which again, he still can and does do. I also still cook for him on the days I'm not cooking anything foreign. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook for him on these days? Not the jerk, but I think you have bigger problems than your husband not liking foreign food. He doesn't respect your time, effort, or job, and is comfortable insulting you casually at a gathering. That is genuinely concerning that he put her down like that. No wonder it was uncomfortable. Also, what do you want to bet he ranted about her to his mom when he was there? Yeah, he would never be eating another home-cooked meal from me. Not the jerk. He was an absolute jerk for making that comment in front of company and for his wording. He didn't want smelly food. Well, you did as he asked and didn't leave him a share so he wouldn't be forced to eat it. No matter how little time one has, everyone has 5 minutes to do an omelet. Cut some mozzarella and some tomatoes on the side, sprinkle salt, basil, and oil, and boom, food. If he doesn't want to do that and has to run to mommy to feed him, then there are way larger issues than his childish palate. Not the jerk. If he's gaming 4.5 hours a night, then how is he doing his fair share of parenting when he's home? He sounds selfish, rude, and entitled. OP. What I mean is that he works for a couple of days, then has a day off. On his days off, he cooks lunch, cleans, spends time with the kids, etc. When he's working, he comes home and plays video games. Thank you for answering my question. You've clarified things, but that doesn't sound like his fair share. When do you get to take a weekday evening off so that you can do your hobby uninterrupted while he cooks dinner and takes care of the kids? Why does he only have to parent on his days off? Also, what he said about your cooking to your friends was wildly rude and he owes you an apology. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
I could really go for some fish and chips myself right now.
I told my son I'd rather have his ex-wife as a daughter than him as my son after he got cut out of our will. 16 years ago, my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife, Josie. I've always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and never answered our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was suffering alone. Last night, Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he had focused more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a jerk and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room, saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me, saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd grow up to be a jerk just like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than have him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. Am I the jerk? Edit. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl before that. Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt, then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. Make sure to leave him and his son $1 each so they can't contest the will by saying you forgot about them. Not the jerk. Dude abandoned his family and only came back sniffing around when his dad was in a bad state and he thought he might get something out of it. He couldn't even be civil and fake nice long enough for that conversation. Not the jerk. I feel sorry for OP and her husband that their son turned out to be a truly bad man. Glad she is a firm enough character herself to appreciate the kindness and love she's received from Josie and that she supports her and Ruth now. Hold steady, OP. Ignore Matt's wife and friends who are only looking for a payday. Don't be swayed by these fakers. Peace to you both. Manager targeted me because of my family priorities. It cost her her job. I have worked at a certain home improvement store for close to a decade now, about 8 years roughly. The first 7 was in North Carolina before I moved up further north to be with my best friend and her husband, who I learned was pregnant with my first godchild. As such, I transferred up to a store in the area and put my nose to the grindstone. I worked garden before and did that for some months before I started to be moved from department to department as this store was low on staff. However, this was not full-time. My old HR had dropped the ball, and this store believed I wanted part-time. Having already moved, I grabbed a part-time overnight job at a gym to make ends meet and continued to work, all the while asking repeatedly for full-time at the main job and never getting a definitive word back or change. Several months into this, my goddaughter was born. As I lived with my friends during this time, and during the time of lockdown, I spent quite a lot of time helping to raise her, and we became close. I would take time off that I was allotted to help look after her, and there were no problems. Half a year into this change, and I had made a good name for myself. I did not have a good deal of friends per se, but I was respected for my work ethic and willingness to help out anyone in any department that asked me. Enter a new assistant manager. The ASM was abrasive to staff and used to getting her way. The first I heard of her was when she outright fired a girl working the front desk because of a logo on her jacket. Myself and several other employees organized a walkout in protest of this and succeeded in getting the store manager to reverse the decision made by the ASM. This was not our first walkout, having done this in the past whenever another ASM, the current's predecessor, made mean comments about a cashier. Soon after this, I was given full-time by the ops manager, working and receiving for a cantankerous supervisor. We often did not get along, especially as my godchild got older and I took on babysitting duties while her parents worked and slept. It was not something I minded, as I adored the kid. I often talked about her with my coworkers and loved to show pictures and stories. However, this was not something shared by my higher-ups. My supervisor was upset that I could not work overtime to help him, as we were the only two in receiving for the store, because of either my second job or babysitting. And soon after the second walkout, I was made aware of a rumor circulating around the store that the kid was in fact my own daughter, that I had fathered outside of my friend's husband's knowledge. The source of the rumor was unknown, but my ASM had made disparaging remarks to me in the past about men taking care of kids, so I had my theories. My holiday plans, asked off in advance as soon as our electronic system allowed, were canceled without explanation, both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I had never missed a major holiday since I moved north, and I had asked the same days off the year prior and had gotten them off before the ASM arrived. Strike one. And soon after this, my supervisor, whom I work closely with every day, had a positive test, forcing me, per company rules, to self-isolate until I could get a positive or negative test myself. During this week, as it took a full week to find a place with enough room to give tests, I was harassed repeatedly by text and phone call by both management and my supervisor to track down an at-home test and get back to work ASAP. All the while, I had to inform everyone I was in contact with, including my friends, family, and roommates, that I had been exposed, risking their own holiday trips and plans. Strike two. Thankfully, my test was negative. A week after this, the Northeast gets slammed by a snow and ice storm. I drive a four-wheeled vehicle and so made it in, but near the end of my shift, I was made aware that my friend's husband had been injured and stranded in a car accident on the ice, and so left to get them home and their car to a service station. To add to it all, they have lost power in their home with an infant, leaving me the only person they could turn to with a vehicle and power. I will admit, I had a few sick hours left, but informed work that I would be out on a family emergency. For that week, I called out each day with ongoing family emergency, with snow and ice still coating the streets and power still down throughout our city. And every day I was hounded by calls from management, demanding I return to work regardless. This would have not only risked my own safety, but would have stranded my family at my apartment with no way to get supplies or get home once the power returned. Strike three. I was done. Early in the morning that following Sunday, I walked into work and placed my resignation letter on HR's desk. That is important later. I had tendered it to be immediate, as I live in an at-will state. Was it petty? Yes, I will freely admit that. I had given 8 years of my life to this company and asked for very little in return. As I was leaving, I crossed paths with my supervisor, who asked angrily if I was finally coming back to work. I informed him of my decision to leave, ignoring his provocations, and left to go home and sleep. Several hours later, I received the gift that would ignite my semi-accidental revenge. A single text from my ASM. "We will see how long you can take care of your love child without us." Well, seems I found my probable source. My friends had been made aware of this rumor from the start. I did not hide anything from them, and they did not want any kind of rumor, however unlikely, to reach them from anyone but me. They are my closest friends and compatriots, and have given me the greatest gift in the form of my godchild, whom they insist I call my niece, as I am family. Love child feels like an insult against her, and I am not cool with that, and neither are they. However, they informed me of the monumental mess-up my now former ASM had made. It was time for corporate HR to be made aware, and so I began to compile my evidence, the texts from my supervisor, the call records and messages left, and this holy grail of a text message. If I was going to leave, I was at the very least going to give some blowback on the team that had been so willing to target me. What happened after is secondhand from friends I had that still worked at the store, and so I cannot entirely verify all of it. But the ASM played herself. The following day, a meeting of management and supervisors was convened, where the ASM made it known that I had been fired, not self-terminated, for job abandonment and immorality. And unless I am grossly misinformed about the nature of American retail work, immorality is not a fireable event. So to my supervisor's credit, he defended me to the ASM and was fired on the spot. The store's HR rep, having earlier gotten my printed termination letter on his desk, made it known that I had indeed not been fired but left on my own, and the ASM attempted to fire him as well in front of the staff, and from there it spiraled. According to my source, entire departments began to walk out or outright quit, having had their own problems with the ASM. Appliances quit to a man. Garden left with their manager to work at a competitor's, as he had been working on this well before my saga began. Front desk walked out in protest as it came out that the ASM had threatened and blackmailed several part-time workers to not wear their headscarves if they wanted hours. Lumber, receiving's main partner, quit. Pro desk joined the front desk protest. Cashiers, both head cashiers quit, and the other trained cashiers walked out with the desks. Ops manager had informed the district manager and quit outright before he arrived, walking out with the HR rep and my old supervisor. My source's last report of the ASM was seeing her sprinting to her car after having heard that the district staff was inbound and the store manager was forced to shut the store down for the next 2 days. Last I've heard. I've been in contact with the other injured parties, and we're compiling all the evidence we've collected, as several of the families are hiring lawyers. I suspect the company will attempt to keep this quiet. I just never suspected that anything like this would happen. I have a full-time position at the gym upcoming, and I've been enjoying the extra sleep and time I get to spend with my family. I'm never working 56 to 64-hour weeks ever again, and I will never darken the doorstep of that store again. I hope my ASM enjoyed the temporary rush of power. I suspect she won't get it ever again, at least not in manager positions. I can work in a group? Are you sure? Background. My senior year of high school, I went on foreign exchange to Brazil. I chose Brazil because it's a beautiful tropical country, and I'm an idiot who thinks just because I'm super smart with math and science that a whole language, Portuguese, would come easily to me. It didn't. I struggled with the language and found myself in an awkward situation. I'm a clever bloke, and I'm used to being able to express that. I'm that guy who likes to know how and why everything works the way it does, and I'm used to launching into conversations and explanations about how things work at the drop of a hat. But here I sat, unable to express myself as eloquently as I wanted to. So I turned from a talkative / mildly obnoxious know-it-all into a quiet kid. Necessary background. While I was in Brazil on exchange, I was placed into public school. Now for my American friends. Brazilian high school is a little different from American. Instead of students going from class to class, the teachers would switch classrooms between each subject. The teacher who is the subject of this story was the English teacher, a man who looked almost identical to Weird Al. He began his classes by walking into the room, holding out some English assignments, throwing an English music video on the TV with Portuguese subtitles, and then he'd read the newspaper or a book for the rest of the class. During his first class, while reading his newspaper, he loudly explained that group work was allowed on all assignments and tests, at which point everyone in the class looked at me. Clearly, he was not aware that he had an American exchange student in his class. Subsequently, every one of his classes for the rest of the term, all the students would form a long conga line around my desk, and he wouldn't notice. Of course, the assignments were trivial for me, the equivalent of middle school English, so I'd knock them out instantly, then provided explanations in broken Portuguese along with the answers. The smarter kids in the class would check their answers against mine and give better explanations. By the end of the year, everyone in his class had a perfect grade. Our teacher was ecstatic. Clearly, his teaching style of playing music videos and ignoring students was a success. He threw a small party for us with food and drinks. At the end of this party, as we were all leaving, I stopped to talk to him in English for the first time since beginning in his class. Me: "Hey, Professor T, I just wanted to thank you for a fun class." Professor T: "Of course, you're American?" Me: "Yes, you didn't know?" I left him there, slack-jawed, and with a class of students speaking very passable English. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter she should change her wedding dress to green? The oldest daughter is straight-laced and is doing the whole get married and have a traditional life. She places a lot of emphasis on her upcoming wedding. My youngest is the opposite. While I don't agree with some of her choices, things she takes, travel, and, I guess, to be a modern-day hippie, she likes the term digital nomad. She's an adult. She pays for her way of life. There's not much more I can do. Oldest kicked my youngest out of the wedding party. It's because my youngest has eloped with her boyfriend. The guy is about 10 years older than her, divorced with 2 kids. I think what set my oldest off is that her fiance comes from money, and the wedding will be stupid lavish. However, my youngest daughter's husband has a lot more money, and he wholeheartedly supports my daughter's artistic temperament. The oldest is being told by her in-laws that her sister doesn't have the same family values as what she's being married into. My oldest has banned her sister from the wedding and says she's going no contact with her sister over her lifestyle choices. I told my oldest what's done is done. She needs to grow up and not expect everyone to live by her lofty standards. She also needs to stop being jealous of her sister, or she might as well make her wedding dress green. Now she has banned me from the wedding. My husband isn't going to go now that I'm forbidden, or his other daughter is forbidden. My oldest is going on a rampage on social media, talking about how her dad refuses to walk her down the aisle at the wedding. I told her she was playing the victim for no reason. Oldest, her fiance, and his family are all blasting up on social media, saying we are immoral people. Not the jerk. Sounds like your oldest daughter has been brainwashed by a cult or something. I'd honestly be worried about her if I were you. Maybe have an intervention. I'm not sure if she has been brainwashed or if she's just willingly ready to drop anyone and anything to marry into a wealthy family and have the perfect wedding and perfect life. I'm also sure that she's upset that her sister was able to marry rich while being true to herself. I will honestly be shocked if the eldest daughter even makes it down the aisle without imploding. If she's ready to drop her sister and parents in a heartbeat, she will probably be hiring and firing her bridal party, fighting with vendors, and throwing a tantrum if the most minor things don't go right. I also find it funny that the groom's stuck-up parents think the sister being an artist is beneath them, but social media drama is real classy. My Karen stepmom is jealous of me spending time with my dad. I'm 14, and I live with my dad and stepmom. My mom passed when I was 5, and my dad and stepmom got together when I was 9, and they got me to move in with my nan. 2 years ago, my nan had a stroke, and she had to go to a nursing home, so I moved in with my dad and stepmom. Ever since my dad and stepmom got together, I couldn't spend time with just my dad. My stepmom had to come too. I also got the vibe she didn't really like me, so I had no idea why she always wanted to hang out with me. It made hanging out with my dad really awkward. When I moved back in with them, it got worse, because every time we were having a conversation, she'd come in like, "What are we talking about?" and just join in the conversation even if it had nothing to do with her. If she could, she would stand or sit between us too. I mentioned it to my dad a couple times, and he said he'd never noticed, and he doesn't think it's true that it's every time. He was like, "It's her house too. She can hang out with us if she wants." I don't think it was getting through to him that it was every time, and it was weirding me out. So next time she did it, I was like, "Hey, why do you always come in and join every conversation I have with my dad and stand between us?" And she laughed and said, "Oh, I'm just a bit of a jealous person." And when I asked what she meant, she was like, "I get jealous when my husband spends time with other girls." I told her that was really weird, and I'm not another girl, I'm his daughter. My dad and stepmom keep insisting it was a joke, but it really creeped me out, and I can't help but take it seriously. I asked her to stop butting into our conversations, and she was like, "Oh, so I need your permission to talk to my own husband in my own home?" which is definitely not what I was saying at all. Now my stepmom is acting all hurt and upset, and my dad wants me to apologize for hurting her feelings. He says I deliberately overreacted to her joke just because I don't like her, and I was taking any excuse to be mean to her and exclude her. But I really feel like it was a weird joke to make, even if she didn't 100% mean it like that, and I think I have the right to be weirded out by it. Plus, I think I have the right to ask to spend some time with just my dad, and it doesn't mean I'm trying to exclude her. Wait, you lived with your nan from when your dad and stepmom got married until your nan was no longer able to take care of you, correct? I'm assuming this wasn't your choice since you were a little kid at the time. She's absolutely jealous of you and she wasn't joking. You weren't allowed to live with your own parent for goodness sake. I don't know who is more of the jerk here, her or your dad, but it sure isn't you. Not the jerk, and both of the adults in this situation should be ashamed of themselves. OP. Yeah, they were like, you're moving in with Nan now. Bye. You deserve a better father. I'm so sorry that he treats you the way that he does. One day he will regret it, but hopefully by that time, you will be the strong, independent, successful woman that you're meant to be. Your dad literally remarried and then threw you out to live with your nan. Horrible. If I were you, I'd throw that in his face. Your stepmom is probably jealous because you were his previous wife's kid and she doesn't want any trace of her. Your dad does not love you properly. Both of them are despicable people, especially your father for letting this happen. Dad can love her and still make bad parenting decisions or put the stepmother first. Please do not say that to a teenager. It is extremely hurtful to feel that way. It can also cause harm. OP, someone can love you and still do bad things, but that does not mean it is okay for them to do so or that you should put up with it. Same goes for you loving them. You can love someone and forgive them and still put boundaries or distance yourself from them. What is going on here isn't okay, but no stranger online can say whether your father loves you or not. I would bring it up to your dad that you want to talk to him one-on-one, then explain to him that them sending you off to your grandma's as soon as he remarried already made things weird. So when this joke came around, it didn't feel like a joke. Maybe some family therapy can help. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend her nannies were paid to raise her? I, 21 male, have a girlfriend named Anna, 21 female, who comes from a very rich family while I came from a middle-class family. And while I did grow up with a lot of privileges, none of them were in the same level as hers. Anna grew up in a home where house staff, nannies, and bodyguards were commonplace, and while she's a very nice and down-to-earth person, she always had a very sheltered reality. For example, she's the kind of person who has a savings account, doesn't eat out every day, and regularly donates to charity, but thinks that Apple products are perfect gifts for whenever she doesn't know what to get someone. A few days back, we were talking about holidays, and I asked her how she spent Mother's Day. Since her mother passed when she was a baby and her father never remarried, she just said that the only usual thing she did on Mother's Day was that she visited her mom's grave in the morning with her father. I got confused by that. Then I asked how she spent the rest of the day, and she mentioned that growing up, she would make cards and give them to the nannies, and they would spend the day playing and eating the sweets she asked her father to order. I just kind of laughed at that point, and she asked me what I was laughing about. Then I told her, you know, the nannies were just doing their jobs, right? She got annoyed and told me that she knew, but they raised and loved her, and the least she could do was to give them their due. And that was when I think I might be the jerk. After she told me that, I joked, yeah, I bet the fat paycheck certainly helped them to love you. Because when I said that, she got quiet, grabbed her things, and left. Since then, she's been cold towards me and told me she's rethinking our relationship, but I really think she's overreacting. What do you guys think? Am I the jerk? Karen expects me to pay for half of her furniture. My girlfriend, who's 23, and I, 24 male, just moved in together yesterday. I moved into her apartment that she had shared with her roommate before I moved in, so the apartment was half furnished since her roommate took half of everything. I lived in an incredibly small bachelor-style studio, so the only things I really had was a queen bed, a couch that she hated, and a TV. We agreed to keep my bed and bed frame since she had a full. She suggested we go to IKEA to restock the house, and she was super excited about it. When we got there, she filled our entire cart with furniture, kitchen, and bathroom stuff. She was asking my opinion on stuff, and I was happy to give it, but I saw the bill racking up pretty quickly. She ended up getting so much stuff that I saw as pointless, like bathroom rugs, a soap dispenser, a dresser, even though she already has one, She got a second matching bedside table for my side of the bed, some art for the apartment, and 2 giant rugs. One for the bedroom and one for the living room. And this is just some of the stuff I didn't even think that we needed. There was plenty more. We ended up having 2 full carts of stuff, and before we even went to check out, she said, "Everything else we can just get on Amazon." I was genuinely in shock. She thought we needed anything more besides all of this crap. But we went to check out, and just like I thought, the total was almost $1,400. She asked the cashier if we could split the bill halfway on 2 cards, and I was horrified. I told her no way was I paying half for all of this. She looked surprised, and we quickly began to argue. She told me this was for the both of us, but I disagreed and said I didn't need half of this stuff. After about 5 minutes of arguing and holding up the line, she paid and we left. The entire hour ride home, we argued, and when we got home, I was given the silent treatment after being called a cheap jerk. Am I the jerk here? Update. After reading many of your comments, I apologized to my girlfriend and Venmo'd her for half. But as of now, I'm currently in trouble because my girlfriend saw this post. Not from Reddit, but from a TikTok. Currently in trouble again. Thanks for the judgment and making me see the light. You're the jerk. If you thought things were too expensive or too much, the time to say so was while shopping. She was asking your opinion and you agreed to the purchases. Why on earth did you just assume she was paying for everything? And a good portion of what you object to is honestly ridiculous. God forbid she want art or rugs in your apartment, right? You're the jerk. Just like this comment. The time to have discussed the prices of things was before you put her on the spot in the checkout line. My partner and I moved from his college apartment to a place of our own a few years back, and a lot of the stuff in the college apartment belonged to our roommates. When we went supply shopping for the new place, I paid for everything, as he wasn't making as much as me at the time. The important part here is I announced that before we left for the store. He didn't expect it of me, nor did he wait until the end of the trip to tell me he couldn't split the bill. Definitely you're the jerk. I understand OP's cheap ways, as I am a frugal franny myself, but some things must be discussed before the checkout line. Apparently, OP thinks bathroom rugs are unnecessary? You're the jerk. And a soap dispenser for the bathroom? Please tell me he at least uses a soap bar. You're the jerk. You moved in. She's making it a home for you both. If you disagreed with what she was getting, you probably had hours to speak up, given the size of IKEA. My husband and I go to IKEA together. Most purchases, he asks where I'd like to put this, and we discuss if it's really needed. You seem to have led her on by liking and agreeing to what she was picking. You're not a bachelor anymore. You need to communicate and work in a team. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
Communication is very important in relationships. You can't just assume the other person is on the same page you are, especially when it comes to finances.
Am I the jerk for embarrassing my husband in front of my parents? Me, 28 female, and my husband, 29 male, have been married for 5 years. My husband was a nurse until he told me he wanted to become a doctor. I was fully supportive, and he's now in his first year of medical school. I've been supporting the both of us as he cannot work while in school, but recently found out our rent was being raised by $500 at the end of our contract in April. This was honestly the last straw as it pushed us past where we were financially comfortable, so I raised the idea of us buying a home. This had been a conversation for years, but my husband had always said we could after he paid off his school debt from nursing, paid off early 2020. I asked my mother, who's a real estate agent, who told me that with what we'd be paying, it would be better for that money to go towards mortgage repayments and not rent. I brought this all up to my husband, who shut it down almost immediately. He told me our agreement was to wait until he had paid off all his debt. I told him that was for nursing and that he was in school for 6 years, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, and some doctors don't pay off their debt for 20 plus years. I told him I had been supportive of this career change and by financially supporting the household, but that it was the best financial decision for us both, but also relieved the financial burden for me. I brought up the savings we had for our deposit and how we could afford something small and modest within budget, but he told me it was in our interest to use that money to pay off his loans. I asked him if he realized the financial burden this would put on me, but he said it was temporary, and eventually he'd make more than me, so it would be even, and I'd agreed to this. My mother called and asked if we were going to look into buying a house, but I told her we weren't, and we'd be looking for somewhere cheaper to rent instead. She insisted we at least consider it because it made the most financial sense, and asked if it was because we didn't have a down deposit. I told her that we were probably going to use that to pay off my husband's debt, and he didn't want more debt until he was debt-free from student loans. Days later, my mother and father came for lunch and told us they had news. They offered to gift us the down payment for a home. I was over the moon and shocked by the offer. Once they left, my husband exploded on me, claiming that I emasculated him and made him look bad in front of my parents. I told him I never asked for this, but we should take it as it was a privilege most people don't get and would relieve so much financial burden on me. He refuses to talk to me or my parents until we apologize for shaming him, but I refused to. I apologized, but told him I wouldn't make my parents as they had done nothing wrong. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Just something to consider, but if you help pay off his student loans and financially support him for the next 10 years, say then he divorces you. You're left with nothing and him a debt-free life, earning a doctor's salary. That was exactly my thought, and that he's actually planning for it. Otherwise, why wouldn't he want to buy a shared asset, like a home, versus something that will only benefit himself? Right? Not the jerk at all. Your husband chose a huge career change. He won't be making substantial money for at least 7 to 8 years. You can't be expected to put your financial goals and life on hold while he goes through school. That's not fair. He's being outrageous. This isn't all about him. My husband went through medical school and is now a resident. He's contributed as much as he could financially through all of this, but I paid for our wedding, our house down payment, and another $10,000 in repairs for the house when we moved in. None of this fazed my husband's ego because we're a partnership. He never acted this way. Absolutely. I'm getting my PhD and have substantial student debt. My partner and I are closing on a house soon because we realized it's exactly the same cost to rent. I would never ask my partner to pay for my student loans because they're mine and therefore my responsibility, not his. OP, not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your husband is straight up ridiculous. Is he otherwise a good partner? Is he thoughtful? Is he kind? Does he respect you in every other area of your life besides this one? And I mean everywhere. Because if he doesn't, I would even wonder if it's worth being married to someone who acts like this. His behavior is honestly laughable. If I were you, I'd take your parents' offer with or without your husband. And put the house in your name only. You'll add him when he starts paying the mortgage. Not the jerk, your husband is though. You need to look carefully and dispassionately at this situation. He doesn't want to buy a house with you, a large financial commitment that binds you and him. He instead wants you to put the money you've earned and you've saved to pay off his student debt while you support him through school. You see the problem here? After school, he could leave you, not have a house tying you together, and have his student loan burden greatly reduced because your money has gone towards it. Someone so wholly selfish and unwilling to consider the feelings and well-being of a partner isn't in this for the long term. I hate to be so negative, but smart money is on him leaving you when he graduates, and with the reduced student loan thanks to your hard work. Protect yourself, sis. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
She should totally call into Dave Ramsey's show. I can hear old Dave right now. Marriage is a sanctimony. That's not his debt, that's both of y'all's debt.
It's Taco Tuesday, jerk. I used to enter recipe competitions for fun as a bored housewife. I was good at finding them online. I had a system, knew what the promoters wanted, and I usually won. So some guy starts some kind of health and fitness website and runs a recipe competition to promote it. I do the thing, a Buddha bowl if you're wondering, and as usual, I'm announced the winner. Congrats, it's Taco Tuesday, you've won $1,000. It's usually not a cash prize, but okay, awesome. Except, he never comes good with the money and just ghosts me instead. I decided to send one last message and move on with my life. I can use the recipe and photo again since it was never published. He finally responds and he's hostile. I'm like, sorry, what? And he proceeds to threaten me with his goons, all like, I know people in Sydney who will mess you up. Oh, he thinks I'm in Sydney? And I tell him to just forget it. I already accepted I'd never see the money. I start Googling this guy and come to find out he's a complete jerk. The proper gym bro, tough guy with no social skills. I also discover he's opening a taco era in Sydney. I infiltrated his Facebook friends list with my creeper account. I added a whole bunch of his friends and family first, so I'd show as having friends in common, and then I used my new position to gather intel. I made a Google account with his mother's name and photo. I'm really that creepy. And left reviews saying his tacos tasted disgusting. Then I made a glitter bomb, using a greeting card that opens landscape style with like a tissue paper full of glitter glued to the insides, and sent it to him at his restaurant. I googled his email address and found his post on Gumtree looking for a chef. So I make a new email address and I'm like, I'm a friend of the most common Facebook friend's last name, family, and they mentioned you're opening a taco era. I'm moving to Sydney. I was a chef at my uncle's Mexican restaurant, and do you have any jobs available? You do? Oh, how exciting. Will you please give me a chance? Great. I look forward to working with you. Every day I had a credible excuse not to show and milked that until he was just about done with my crap. Then I left a message with an employee. I can't come into work today because Taco Guy didn't give It's Taco Tuesday her prize for the recipe competition he ran on his failed website, and then he threatened her. After then, I waited for him to contact me. He was a little upset, and I confessed everything. All the little mind games, all the petty crap, canceled orders, all of it. He told me he'd pay me if I stopped. I declined the offer. I said I'd rather have $1,000 worth of fun at his expense. Maybe next time, don't threaten people with goons. I said I might not ever get bored of this, and the last thing I ever said, every time you have a bad day, you're going to wonder if I was somehow involved. Am I the jerk for financially blackmailing my daughter and controlling where she goes to school? I, 42 female, have 2 kids with my ex, Mike, who's 47, including Val, she's 17. She's in her senior year of high school and deciding where she wants to apply for college. We've been lucky enough to save a college fund totaling $150,000 for Val. When looking at schools she was interested in, I sat her down and talked her through the process plus her fund. Mike lives in another state, but knew we were having this talk. I told her how much she had and discussed different options. I told her how state schools are typically cheaper and how she might have to take out a loan if she chose a more prestigious school or didn't qualify for scholarships. I told her that if she didn't spend all of the money on schooling, it would still be hers after graduation. I also brought up how staying close to home would save on living expenses if she didn't want to live on campus. I wanted her to make an informed decision with all the facts, especially financially. Because of this, Val has looked at a range of state and Ivy schools. Mike called me furious, saying that Val was considering a school close to where I live and that it was only because I had scared her into it by telling her she couldn't afford other schools. I told him I had had an age-appropriate conversation about college, finances, and student debt with Val, and she was making decisions that are in her best interest, not mine or his. Before this, Val had considered moving in with her dad as he lived driving distance to an Ivy League school she wanted to go to. Now she is apparently looking at other schools and isn't as on board with that discussion anymore. Mike said that I had financially blackmailed her so that she wouldn't go live with him, and that I'd only told her all these things to scare her financially. Edit. Wow, I didn't realize this would get so many judgments, but lots to read through, and thank you to everyone for sharing your college and university experiences. To clarify, both me and Mike went to the same Ivy League college where we met, so I have nothing against those schools and would 100% support Val choosing one of those schools as they have their own advantages. I got an internship due to the school I went to, so I understand and want those connections for my daughter as well. This conversation is obviously redundant currently, as we don't know what school she'll get accepted into, scholarships, etc., but it kept getting brought up, so here we are. I'll be reading through everyone's judgments. Not the jerk. Observing that Yale costs more than local community college is not blackmail, financial or otherwise. And yes, you did tell her those things to scare her financially. Being scared is the appropriate adult response to paying for an Ivy League school. The contacts you make at an Ivy League can be amazing, especially if you live in the dorms. For example, the mailing lists of jobs is amazing. I didn't go to an Ivy League, but I've dated a couple of women who have. The hidden benefits is an entire world I knew nothing about, and I went to a fancy pants college prep high school. I went to community college, then state university. I wish I had understood as a teenager. I snapped at a Karen at the grocery store when she calls me a bad parent. My son, 6 months old, has been cranky all morning because he's teething. I, 27 male, had to go grocery shopping, and since it's just me taking care of him, he came with me. Normally he's calm when I have him in his baby carrier because right now he just wants to be held by me, but I forgot that at my mom's yesterday, so went in with his stroller to the market. The plan was to be in and out in under 5 minutes because he really wasn't having it today. This lady kept popping up at every aisle I was in. Well, it's a small market too, so it's not like she was intentionally following us. He wouldn't stop crying. Then she'd say, "He's hungry. Why didn't you bring his bottle?" And I would tell her, "No, he's not hungry. He just ate 15 minutes ago." Then it was, "Sure. Hope your daddy remembered to change you this morning. At some point, I picked him up for a little bit. He calmed down when I rocked him, then lost his crap again when we got to the checkout line because I needed to put him back in his stroller so I could put everything on the counter and pay. It was already a stressful day for me. I'm overwhelmed trying to hurry up, putting everything in a bag while my son is crying. This lady is at the checkout line next to me and says, "Maybe next time he should stay at home with mommy, don't you think?" Normally, I'm not a confrontational person, but this one really got to me. Well, his mom passed away, so why don't you just mind your own darn business already and go? She looked at me a little shocked, and then there were other people there too, so she turned red. The lady didn't say anything to me at all, but then in the parking lot, she apologized about his mom, but she didn't think I needed to be rude and throw that in her face because she didn't know what had happened. I really didn't want to get into it anymore. I just told her to get the heck out of my way and leave me alone. Got in my car and left. I'm home now, more calm, and wondering if she had a point. Because like I said, normally I'm not like that with people, but since it was already a hard day and stuff, it infuriated me so bad. Was it an overreaction though? I get sometimes people think they're helping, when in reality know nothing when it comes to calming a baby and usually brush that off. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She was shaming you for being a father. You were doing your best to care for a 6-month-old as a single parent, and she was following you around harassing you. Edit. Not intentionally following you, but still defiantly harassing you and shaming you at seemingly every opportunity. She should have praised him for being such a kind, loving father to a wonderful son. He was just being a parent. No need to praise or harass. He's doing a great job with a teething kid, yes, but he doesn't need to be patronized and thrown a parade just because he's a father and not a mother. He shouldn't be thrown a parade because he's a father. He should be thrown a parade because he's a parent, and all parents need affirmation when things seem to be just a mess. I'd think most parents in that kind of stressful, "we'll get home soon, buddy" moment would probably prefer to just be left alone by complete strangers. Like, just leave people alone. The random person in the grocery store does not need your commentary, even if you think it's complimentary. Keep your eyes focused on your own work. Parents need support much more than they need praise, although praise can play into support. But the random lady in public is not an authorized member of their support team. When I was a kid, my dad treated a waitress so poorly she quit in the middle of serving us. This happened about 25 years ago, and I still think of it about once a month. My dad used to think of himself as a fancy, business-type gentle fellow. We'd go to restaurants, and he'd try to order off-menu at like a chain restaurant. He wouldn't wash his hands before we ate. He'd have the waitstaff bring him lemons and then rinse his hands in lemon juice, because I guess that's what fancy people do. It always took several attempts to seat us because he'd walk around the place trying to find a place to sit worthy of his time. He was insufferable. And as a kid, it turned me into a walking apology for his behavior. One weekend, we went to get dinner, just he and I, and he went through all of his usual behavior. But he was actually in a pretty good mood, so I had high hopes. Unfortunately, as soon as the waitress started taking our drink order, he found out that they were out of real cream for his coffee. He didn't get upset or raise his voice, because that's what the common people did, but he laid right into this poor woman about the sheer temerity of running a restaurant and not having the ability to meet the basic needs of your customers, and then trying to smooth things over with cheap, fake products like non-dairy creamers. He suggested that she was trying to make him sick by feeding him some sort of chemical. I remember her exact face as she just stared at him and took it, not knowing what to say. It haunts me. He ended up just ordering an appetizer and she left politely and never returned. He and I sat in that booth for 30 or 40 minutes until the manager finally came out and went table to table, explaining that the waitress had quit suddenly. My dad was of course offended, and the manager of course offered to give us our meals for free. And that's the part that annoys me the most, that my dad won. Hopefully that poor woman found a better job. Am I the jerk for telling my friend my boyfriend would never date her? I, 26 female, have been with my boyfriend Jason, who's 25, for about 2 years. I've known my friend Stacy for about 8 years. For as long as I've been dating Jason, Stacy has made rude comments about how unattractive she finds him. She always says things like, "I would never date Jason because his nose is too big. It's like a clown nose." That's literally something she said last week. She doesn't say it to Jason's face, just to me. I always ask her to stop, and she does for a bit. But then after a day or two, she'll do it again. It really irritates me. The other day, she made the clown nose comment, And she also made fun of Jason's laugh, and I snapped. I told her that she should stop wasting her time on hating Jason because if Jason was single, there's no way he'd date her. I also asked if she would like me to make fun of her to her back the way that she does to Jason, and I threatened to do it. As a disclaimer, I would never actually do that. I just said it to prove a point. Stacy started crying and she left my house. She told some of our other friends about the incident and they said I was a jerk for saying Jason wouldn't date her. They said it really hurt her feelings, and since she's single and I'm not, I should have had some tact. Stacy also said my comments implied that she was undateable, even though I never said that. I just said that Jason wouldn't date her. Anyway, it's a bit of a mess of a situation. I wanted to ask this sub if I'm the jerk. So am I? Not the jerk. Your friend is a sicko. She either has a crush on him, so she tries to constantly insult him to hide it, or she's extremely jealous of you having a boyfriend, so she's projecting hard. Either way, she sounds like a crappy manipulator by trying to twist your words and running to others. She probably also told the friends a completely different story of what had happened, most likely making herself appear like the victim in that situation. Not the jerk. I'm kind of feeling like she is interested in him and is making the comments to throw you off. Not the jerk. Why are you even friends with someone like that? OP. Not really sure, to be honest. I think it was mostly a friendship of convenience, plus the fact that we had known each other for so long. If she's willing to talk about your boyfriend behind his back, she'll have no problem talking smack about you two. Oh wait, she just did that. She is not your friend. Am I the jerk for wanting to evict my sister? About 5 years ago, my dad had a heart attack. The medical bills are through the roof. My parents didn't want to lose their home, so my fiance at the time bought the house out because she had the money. She got the legal documents saying my parents could live there for the rest of their lives, and after their passing, the house reverts to her. We moved across the country for work, letting my dad and mom stay in the house rent-free, and they pay the utilities. We pay the taxes and whatever repairs they need. My sister moved back to my parents with her new husband. They've been trying to get my parents to rewrite the will. My dad said, we don't own the house anymore, and my sister flipped. She said it's now her house, and she's been helping my parents for 2 years. Her husband has been fixing around the house, mowing, and he fixed a broken sink. My sister called my wife, saying she was robbed of her inheritance. My wife said she'd sell my sister the house at current market value. My sister is telling everyone that my wife is a jerk and trying to profit off the family. My parents are now wanting to get a mortgage to repurchase the house. They then want to split the house costs with the family after they pass. This is being fed into my parents every day. The problem is that they want to get a mortgage and then they would have to pay that monthly when they have no bills now. My sister is feeding lies to my parents who are elderly and I want them out of the house. So I started the eviction process on my sister and her husband. My parents think I am an absolute jerk, but this was never an issue until my sister and her husband moved in. Not the jerk, but if your parents can now afford to pay a mortgage bill, then let them buy back the house on the condition that it and any financial obligations revert 100% to your sister on their passing. Am I the jerk for letting my wife sleep on the couch and going to bed? My wife has a habit of falling asleep on the couch. She is a very heavy sleeper. When we sit down to watch TV, she always tells me to wake her up to go to bed so she can take her medicine. Well, 90% of the time when I try to wake her up, she just tells me 5 more minutes, several times for a couple of hours. Sometimes it even gets past midnight before I can get her up. I'm exhausted from the day and I want to go to sleep too. So the last time this happened, I tried to get her up for about an hour and a half. She just got annoyed when I tried. So when 11:30 rolled around, I just went to bed. The next morning, she was furious. Genuinely curious if I'm making a jerk move. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She's in charge of where she sleeps, not you. I wouldn't take that crap from a partner. OP. Yeah, I'm starting to feel like I'm just a glorified servant to her. I would just tell her that from now on, you will either not wake her up once, whatever you want to do, but tell her ahead of time and stick to it. Eventually, she will either figure out how to do it on her own, get up when you tell her the first time, or sleep on the couch. But it is helpful if you set what she should expect from you ahead of time. Entitled parent left their kid at the airport. Back when I used to work at an airport, I often dealt with kids traveling without parents. This was a paid service called unaccompanied minors, available to everyone under 18, but mandatory to kids under the age of 12 who traveled alone. The rule is that the parent or guardian, or whoever escorts them, for the sake of clarity, I'll just refer to them all as parents from this point, has to stay at the airport until the plane is in the air. This was in case the flight was canceled, because the paid service did not cover anyone staying with the kid until the next flight. The most extreme case would obviously be that there'd be no flight available that day anymore, in which case the kid would have to go home and come back the next day. Obviously, most parents were fine with going to the gate with their kids and staying until the very last minute. In all my years, I only had trouble with one entitled dad. He came to the business counter with his kid, which was already a big no-no, as checking in unsupervised kids takes longer than average, and the business counter was, well, supposed to be a fast lane for business class and high-tier passengers. The dad chose his own gold card, so I bit back my annoyance and asked the person next to me to check in my queue until I was done. I gave the dad all the forms he had to fill, which already annoyed him. The kid was obviously under 10 and seemed very sweet. She looked relaxed, and I guessed she had done this plenty of times. Over the years, you learn to spot the ones who are not accustomed to traveling alone. The dad gave me back the forms and asked, "So, where do I leave her?" I got a bit confused, but told him, like always, that he had to stay at the airport until the plane was in the air. Entitled dad. "What? No, I paid for her to be accompanied." Me. "Well, yeah, from the gate to the plane and from the plane to arrivals." Entitled dad. "I have a meeting in a town 3 hours away. I can't stay with her." Me. "Sir, what if the flight is canceled? We'd have to call you back." "She'd stay here with you, wouldn't she?" Me. "That's not a possibility. Sir, you agree to the terms when you pay." "I didn't pay for this. Her mother did, and she told me I could just leave the kid with you." At this point, the kid started crying. "Daddy, please, come with me." "Don't start. You like flying, don't you?" Kid. "Mom always comes with me." "I don't care. I don't have the time. I want to speak to your manager." While we waited for my supervisor, we heard an announcement through the loudspeakers about a car in the no parking zone. The entitled dad went, "Crap!" and ran away, leaving his daughter at my counter. She started crying in earnest, and I panicked that the dad was taking this opportunity to bail. My supervisor came. We closed my counter completely. The queue was almost empty at this point, and took the kid aside to talk over our options, hoping that the dad would come back. After 5 minutes and no dad later, we tried to call him. His number was on the papers he had signed. No answer. Then we tried the mom, whose contact info was also on the papers. She said she'd call the dad and asked if there was any way we could take the kid to the gate if he didn't appear, if she promised she'd be there in about 30 minutes. We told her that there was still plenty of time before the flight left and that they could skip the security queue so we could make a little exception and wait for her at the check-in with the kid, but that we wouldn't let the kid go to the gate without the parent. The mother was understanding and told us that either she or the dad would be there soon. A few minutes later, the dad did come back, arguing over the phone with who we assumed was the mom. He yanked the daughter away and took her through security. We felt bad, but thought that was that. Nope. I went back to my counter to finish the check-in and then got a call from the gate telling me that the dad had left the kid with them. Obviously, there's a lot to do before a flight leaves, so they couldn't really look after her, and they asked if I could try to see him and tell him to come back. I didn't manage to spot him, and my supervisor told me to go sit with the kid while she, again, called the mom. My shift was about to end, so I didn't have to hurry anywhere except home, and I agreed to work a little overtime. The kid was in tears, and my shift manager had to get involved. While my supervisor called the mom, the shift manager called the airline asking if we can allow the kid on the flight if there's no parent present when the flight leaves. We were a ground handling company and did not directly work for any airline. They told us straight up that no. Fortunately, I then got a call from my supervisor telling me the mom had arrived. To make things easier at the security, me and the kid went back to check-in. The mom signed new forms and escorted the kid through security again. The kid made the flight fine and it left on time. The mom was so embarrassed about the whole incident, but didn't really stay to explain the dad's behavior, and well, it wasn't really our business anymore. She did say this was the first and last time the dad would ever escort the kid and thanked us for doing all we could. She was obviously upset and overwhelmed, but we're not a country where we share more than we have to, so it was not surprising that she just left after the thank you. I had to stay a while longer to write an incident report and got home absolutely exhausted. My husband spends all his time talking to a Karen on FaceTime. My husband has a 19-year-old daughter that's in college. She tested positive on Wednesday afternoon, and she's been by herself in the dorm ever since. She is mildly sick. She's been FaceTiming my husband for hours every day. We also have 2 small kids who are 7 and 2 years old. Our 7-year-old is a daddy's boy. His daughter was not in his life prior to last year when she wanted contact with him. He never mentioned having a daughter to me. On Thursday, my husband was at work, and I guess his daughter kept trying to FaceTime him throughout the day, which he said annoyed him. That night, he was FaceTiming her from around 7 p.m. until midnight. He put his phone facing the TV so they could watch movies and TV together. He ate his dinner on the couch separate from the rest of us. He ignored bedtime routines and told me I can handle it, while our 7-year-old was crying for him. He was sitting on the couch with his phone chatting away to his daughter for hours. On Friday night, our 7-year-old had a hockey game and he wished him good luck and gave him a hug, but didn't bother to get dressed and go to the game. He stayed home on FaceTime with his daughter. I took our kids and my mother out to the game. I came back to find my husband on the couch sleeping and his daughter sleeping on FaceTime. Yesterday, she FaceTimed him in the morning for a little bit and then again around 4 p.m. He ate dinner in the living room while watching football and FaceTiming her. He got off FaceTime around 2 a.m. last night after making something in the kitchen and being loud on his way upstairs. He again didn't help out with bedtime routines and ignored our oldest when he wanted to play Legos or video games with his dad. Today, my husband's phone kept ringing while he was sleeping and it was his daughter. I told my husband when he woke up that he's been ignoring our kids lately and he needs to limit how long he talks on the phone with his daughter. I get that she's sick and lonely, but he's putting our kids on the back burner. My husband said he feels bad for his daughter and he wants to build a relationship with her. He said our kids see him every day and all his daughter has is FaceTime calls. She has no friends and nobody else to talk to and she's going through a lot. I said, with you working during the week and the few hours you have during the evening being spent on FaceTiming your daughter, you really don't spend time with our kids that much, and yesterday you blew our oldest off for hours to talk to her. He got up and said he was done talking about this. His daughter is going through a lot. She is sick and stuck in her dorm with nobody to talk to. He said I'm being ridiculous. Our oldest can entertain himself, and if not, then I should go do something with him. He then said, "Why do I always have to do things with our oldest? Why can't you?" I have, and he prefers his dad over me. He got dressed and left. He's been gone for hours and isn't returning my texts or calls. His daughter is 19. I'm sure she has other friends to speak to, regardless of his claim that she doesn't. She doesn't need to fall asleep on the phone with her dad. Where's her mom in this situation? OP. His daughter claims to hate her mother, and she's not talking to her. I didn't even know about the daughter until last year when he was sneaking around FaceTiming her and wouldn't tell me who he was talking to. When he did tell me, he said he has a daughter from a relationship he was in when he was like 20. He said the mother kept her from him and he didn't have money to fight back in court. He told me he was embarrassed about it and wanted to forget about the incident and move on with his life. The daughter contacted him on Facebook last year and they've been in contact since. She usually only FaceTimes him a few times a week, not this much, and not for hours at a time like recently. Edit 3. I reached out to the daughter on Facebook Messenger. I said, "Hi, we've never met before, but I'm husband's name's wife. I was wondering if we could have a little chat and get to know each other. If not, that's okay too. Thought I would try to break the ice. Take care." She replied, "My dad told me not to talk to you, and I don't know why you were even contacting me after saying all those nasty things about me. You don't even like me. I never did anything to you or spoke to you, but the fact that you don't even know me, yet you are judging me, says a lot about how terrible of a person you are. Do me a favor and do not contact me again. I don't want anything to do with you or your kids. Those poor kids sure as heck picked up on your genes because they look like you. Ew. They're gonna get bullied hardcore, laughing my booty off. I hope my dad can at least teach them to be better people so they don't turn out like you. And the fact I can't come live with you because my dad told me you would make my life living heck, go forget yourself, seriously." I said back, "I'm extremely confused on what you're talking about. Your dad has not mentioned you coming to live with us, and I'm also confused on what you mean by me judging you. As you said, I don't know anything about you, so there's quite a bit of miscommunication here. It's fine if you don't want to be involved in my or my kids' lives. I thought I would just put the option out there. You are an adult and free to choose who you want to associate with. Best of luck with everything, and sorry for bothering you." She said,
BS. That's all I hear is BS. You know darn well what you said because my dad told me exactly what you've been saying. Go check yourself into a dementia unit if you are so confused. Leave me alone and never message me again. I hate you with a burning passion. I never want to meet you or have anything to do with you. Don't you get it? Take your pathetic sorry self and your kids with you and go get hit by a bus.
And then she blocked me.
Yowza canowza. Maybe you should think about filing a restraining order.
Yeah, this girl sounds like she needs an exorcism.
Darn straight, Reddit boy. Darn straight.
New neighbor claims I threatened them with my dog. For some context, I, female 28, just moved from my city to my first house in a suburban neighborhood about 6 months ago. Just me and my dog, Oaken, a Dutch Shepherd. My dog is trained as a personal protection dog, PPD. I'm a runner and Oaken runs with me. We were running in our neighborhood's park and pond area. I had my AirPods in. It was just getting dark. I noticed in passing a guy on his bike on the same trails, and as we were coming around the pond, he was stopped on our path. He waved us down and said he had dropped his keys, asked if I had seen them on the path, asked if I had a light on me because he thinks he dropped them in the grass, wanted to know if I lived in the neighborhood, which house was mine, if I was nearby because he didn't see any cars in the parking area that he didn't recognize. Basically, anything to do to keep us there and keep talking. Not scary, but annoying with a definite hint of creepy. After he forgot his initial story, he said, "I'm gonna be so upset with myself if I lost another earbud. That's my third pair, and they're nearly $300 a pop." I moved to leave, and he stood in the path and started asking about Oaken. Oaken wasn't exactly doing anything aggressive at this point. No hair raised, no growling or barking. He was doing exactly what he was trained to do, and every time the guy would move to get closer to us, he would just stand between him and me. The guy asked if he was friendly, asked to pet him, and I said I'd rather he not. He kept saying dogs loved him, blah blah. I again said no, and we started to walk around the guy to go. That's when he decided it would be a good idea to try to grab Oaken's leash. I have no idea why. Your guess is as good as mine. Oaken backed us up. Low growl, showed his teeth. Didn't snap, didn't bite. We left. The encounter was strange enough I posted in the neighborhood app. Nothing accusing the guy of attacking us or anything over the top like that, just that my dog and I had gotten stopped by a stranger out running and a reminder not to grab at a person's dog or leash without permission. Apparently, Park Guy's wife read the post and recognized her husband immediately because since then she's been telling every neighbor who will listen about my aggressive dog attack. I've now gotten a letter from the HOA and apparently the next homeowners meeting has breed-specific bans on the agenda. While I believe Oaken's response was appropriate and controlled, I'm feeling sad and disappointed that my new community has the wrong impression. I'm not out to terrify people. Am I the jerk for posting what I posted to the neighborhood app and apparently starting a feud with my new neighbor? Was I wrong for calling out Park Guy publicly? ETA. Yes, I have a home security system and cameras. The previous homeowners had a couple of collectible cars in the detached garage/apartment and put in an extensive system. Park Guy's questions about where I lived, etc. didn't immediately set off crazy red flags because I've been asked very similar questions by multiple women multiple times in the neighborhood too. I'm getting the impression I'm the youngest person in the area by a good 20 or more years because people have asked me who my parents are, who I'm visiting, etc. It seems like the only young people hanging around are ones who drive in from other places to get to the park, and this neighborhood seems weirdly territorial about their park. I will definitely talk to an officer about a report. Not the jerk. Make sure to tell everyone about the aggressive husband. OP. I don't know if I really want to escalate this into a full-fledged war of words, but I'm tempted to jump into the fray and defend myself and my dog. Remember, she chose to out her creepy husband, not you. Without her outing him, he could have been a non-resident, but she decided that defending him when she had plausible deniability was the best choice, not the jerk. Not to mention, his story of losing his keys changed. Something isn't right here. If you end up responding, it would be good to mention that. Earbuds, keys, totally different items. You need to tell them. 1. He blocked your path. 2. He asked you to help find the keys and then later said he had lost a headphone. 3. He prevented you from leaving more than once. 4. He asked for personal information about where you lived. and then ends with he touched your dog after being told not to. And honestly, I can't believe you left all that out of your initial story and just made it sound like a nice guy tried to pet your dog. That dude is using well-known tactics. Do escalate. He was a threat. He threw some major red flags. 1. Second time seeing him, which would be nothing if not for point 2. 2. Changed his story. 3. Asked way too many unnecessary questions which were personal. 4. Blocked your attempts to leave multiple times. 5. And most importantly, ignored your repeated no's. That man was either there to attack you or steal your dog. His wife is just trying to change the narrative to make you look like the attacker rather than the rightful victim. Go to that meeting and defend your dog's actions and tell them everything that happened. If he doesn't want people to think of him as a creep and a danger, he shouldn't act like one. Am I a bad mom for not allowing my daughter to have random guys spend the night at our house? I, female 51, and my daughter, 19, Joan, recently got into a heated argument and we're turning to random strangers on the internet for guidance in determining who is right. I say we, as this post is her suggestion. My kids were raised in a traditional but non-religious family. Husband and I have been married over 25 years. Although it was, even admittedly rare back in the 90s, we actually waited until we were officially married before we hooked up for the first time. Currently, Joan is attending college and lives with us in our developed basement with a separate entrance. Our 2 other kids have moved out for good. Although Joan is not in a relationship, she is socially active and dates on occasion. The issue, last night, Joan was out with friends, and as mothers are prone to do, I never fall completely asleep until I hear her come home. So last night, she was back around 1 a.m., and as I was still fully awake, I went downstairs to see how her night went. I was, however, wholly unimpressed when I saw her on the couch with a guy she had just met that night. They weren't engaged in anything yet. However, it was evident where events were likely to lead. Although I was polite, I commented to Joan that she really needed to get to sleep as we were planning an early morning walk, and I waited patiently as her new friend got the hint and left. Afterwards, Joan was livid and says that I thoroughly embarrassed her, and that, as she was an adult, she should be able to see whomever she wants, whenever she wants, and wherever she wants. My position is that she is an adult. However, she has no right to bring a stranger into our house without my knowledge as, 1, lockdown is going on. She says that argument is a red herring because we all have our shots. 2, our house belongs to her dad and I. I'm not comfortable with having a complete stranger spend the night. Her argument is that she's still a dependent as she's going to college and it's still her house too. 3, although I don't approve, I agree that as an adult, she can engage in whatever legal activity she chooses. However, not in my house. She knows my views on this kind of stuff, and by engaging in this activity in my house, with me at home, it's a massive sign of disrespect. 4, if she really wants to spend the night like this, that's what hotels are for. Her argument is that, although she's working, she's saving for her future, and that would be a stupid waste of money. So, am I the jerk for making her friend leave, or should I just ignore my long-held belief system and accept her choices as an adult? Edit. My husband's position is that he's taking the Switzerland position, officially neutral. I'm not happy with his lack of support, but I'm not going to engage in a two-front war at the moment. Edit. To answer a few questions and add some comments. 1. Joan does not pay rent. As with all of our kids, she's on the free room and board plan so long as she is attending school. 2. I've never been a helicopter parent, and the notion that not resting comfortably until my daughter gets home on a Saturday night is akin to overparenting is absurd. My husband is a retired detective, and as he always said to the kids, rarely does anything good happen at 3 in the morning. 3. No, we had never discussed these types of things prior to last night, as the issue never came up. Would my feelings be different if Joan was in a long-term committed relationship? Honestly, I don't know. I'll have to cross that bridge when it happens. Final edit. Thank you, anonymous internet friends. Although my position won with a not the jerk ruling, both my daughter and I gained some insight by reading through many of the comments. Joan acknowledges that bringing someone she just met back to our house was inappropriate for a few reasons. In turn, I've left the door slightly open to the concept of a visit by a long-term partner that we know and are comfortable with. However, it would need to be discussed and agreed to in advance. Not the jerk. I completely agree with you. When I was a college student, my parents wouldn't allow random strangers to come and sleep in their home. Joan needs to remember that while she is an adult, the home belongs to you and your spouse. You're paying the mortgage and rent. An adult is supposed to be responsible for his or her own choices and decisions. If your daughter doesn't like the rules, ask her to pack up her things and move out. I disagree with this, so just wanted to offer another perspective. I agree that the mom can have those rules, but I still think she's the jerk for them due to the potential unintended consequences. Mostly that the mom, same mom who can't go to sleep until she knows her daughter is safe at home, would rather her go to a hotel with a random stranger than have her come home, just because she disagrees with the activity. Prioritizing her beliefs over the daughter's safety makes her the jerk for me, especially since it sounds like her daughter has her own separate area of the home, so it's not like she's in the room next to the parents. You're the jerk. I accept your opinion, but I disagree with you as well. My parents did that when I was in college, and they wanted to know that we were safe back home when coming back late. This lady is a good parent, and she is not prioritizing her beliefs over her daughter. However, it's her home, period. Her house, her rules. I posted another comment with more details about this, but I also had parents like this, and it led to very unsafe scenarios for me. Your house, your rules doesn't mean parents don't have crappy rules. I went to college with a girl who had mean parents that didn't allow people over because of their color. Their house, their rules, but that doesn't mean it's not a crappy rule and that they wouldn't be the jerk. The question here is whether or not she's allowed to have rules at the house. It's whatever, she's the jerk. Lying to my parents about where I was is exactly how I was attacked by someone who I knew for a decade plus. Had I been able to come home drunk that night, it wouldn't have happened. OP is putting her daughter in precarious situations because of her personal beliefs. She puts higher value on her own image rather than her daughter's safety. I won't call her the jerk though, because it is bringing strangers into her home. I just don't want OP to pretend like she's a great mom and give a shocked Pikachu face when her daughter realizes how truly toxic her values system is. If she can't sleep till her daughter comes home, she's going to be wanting to know when she's out at hotels with guys, or at the very least not coming home. At that point, it opens up for mom to give opinions on where and what her daughter is doing, which I think is an overstep at this age. I also don't see OP being comfortable with her daughter doing that regularly, and it could lead to problems of claiming she's spending too many late nights not coming home. The alternative is she brings her dates home, into this separate suite, and mom respects her autonomy as long as it is legal. What is your priority? No hooking up in the house, or knowing your daughter is coming home at night? I don't think either answer is wrong, just that only one can be the deciding factor in your relationship. I would also argue that if the daughter is paying rent, she should be able to have opposite or same people encounters in her space. If she is not, it could be a compromise. A nominal rent fee equals adult space. Mom doesn't check in when her daughter comes home. If she needs a check-in, she can send her daughter a text. Or daughter goes to a hotel for hookups like most of us. To the daughter, it is your mother's home and ultimately you need to respect her decision. If you aren't paying rent, then no hooking up in the house. Adult privileges come with adult prices. Do you want her to engage in these types of activities with someone in a place where she's safe, or in a place where she isn't safe? You may be thinking, well, at least I can control what happens under my roof, or just don't do it in my house. But if it's not happening in your house, then it's likely to happen somewhere else. And if things turn bad when she's somewhere else, she's on her own. Additionally, now that she's an adult and can come and go independently, you need to start loosening how intrusive you're being. I get that it's hard to sleep if you don't know that she's in yet, but that is your issue to deal with, not hers. Nor should you be nosing in with, we have plans tomorrow morning, so you need to go to sleep. Her need for sleep is on her to manage. How well are you going to sleep if she moves out soon? Long before you might want her to, because she can't stand the lack of privacy and how you're still treating her like a kid. Do you want a good relationship with your rules or with your daughter? So yes, you're the jerk. It's reasonable, however, for you to not want her to bring complete strangers into your house for security and privacy reasons, but there are more careful places to draw that line than what you're trying to do. You're arguing, but it's a stranger, while what you want to have for rules stretches a lot further. Absolutely not. If you want your own life without your parents meddling, then get your own place. Her mom ain't gonna stay up late waiting for her kid if her kid doesn't live with her. But the fact that Joan does live with her, then she has to follow her rules. I go to college, have my own place, work part-time, and can hook up with whoever, wherever, and whenever. Joan is a leech if she can't simply follow her parents' rules. Joan is 19. She's not a leech, and you don't know what the economy for buying in their town is. ETA, I've never had this many likes before. Oh my. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know.
Want adult privileges? How about moving out and being an adult? Hopefully OP won't get stuck raising a grandbaby like the grandpa did in yesterday's story.
I won over $5,000 in court after a car accident that I caused. Okay, so just a little bit of info before I get into the story. I, 22 male, work construction and run a few crews, and I'm a foreman because I've been working in this field since I started working summers when I was 14. That's legal in my state. With this being said, I have a lot of experience and get paid very well. For my job, I need a truck that can pull a lot of trailers and also get into a lot of sketchy job sites, especially in the winter. So I drive a new lifted pickup, F350. Anyways, let's get into it. So about 4 months ago now, I got off work one day and I just really didn't feel like making dinner, so I decided to go get myself the trusty Big Mac at McDonald's. Well, after I got my order, I was going to pull out into the parking lot to drive home, and I was looking hard over to my left to see how busy the road was before I got over there. Well, I wasn't paying great attention to what was happening in front of me, and as I was creeping forward, someone who was in front of me was stopped and not paying attention either. I ended up barely hitting his mirror and scraping his door with my front end. I immediately reversed and hopped out. I made sure the guy was okay and apologized, knowing it was my fault, and asked him if he would like to call the cops. Let's call him Brent. Brent says, "Nah, bro, we are all good. If you just get me your insurance info, I think we can get this taken care of." I was fine with that, as there was no damage done to my truck, and it's not required to call the cops for an accident if it occurs in a private parking lot. This is relevant later. We exchange info, and he seems pretty cool, so I tell him to go get the damage bid, and I'll just pay in cash so my insurance rates don't go up as long as he's okay with it. He says that's fine, and we both just leave, and I feel like a moron. But all in all, Brent seems like a cool dude, and I just hope we can get it sorted out smoothly. About a month passes by, and I haven't heard anything from Brent or the shop I told him to go to. Honestly, I wasn't too stressed about this, because if he decided to not get it done, that's on him. Well, he calls me up one day at about noon, saying he can't remember my name, and he wanted to tell the guys at the shop who sent him there because it seemed like we knew each other. I told him my name, and the guys at the shop gave him a deal. Pretty sure they say this to everyone. He sends me the bid for damages, and it comes out to $2,403. This was more than I imagined, but I said to get it done, and I'd take care of the bill afterward, and that was that. He hung up, said it was cool, and I went on with my day as usual. Another month goes by, and I don't hear anything until Brent calls me up while I'm at work again and says, "Hey brother, I talked to the shop, and they said they can't get me in for another 2 weeks or so, and they may end up charging me more if they find more damage." I said, "Okay, sounds good. Just let me know, man. I hope it goes smooth for you, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience." He seems to take it good, and I'm really trying to just be a good person. He responds with, "Well, after talking to my wife, I'm okay if you just wanted to write a check for $2,500 and we can call it even." This seemed odd to me, because why the heck wouldn't someone want their vehicle repairs all paid for? I say, "Okay man, let's set a time and place to meet and I'll get you paid." He liked the idea and ended the call by telling me he would let me know. Yet another month passes by and I hear nothing again. At this point, I'm getting fed up and just want this situation to stop being over my head. He hits me up at 11 p.m. one night and asks if we can meet in town. I found this kind of disrespectful because I was nearly asleep and had to be at work at 5 a.m. the next day. Either way, I said that was fine and took my $2,500 cash and wrote up a quick contract saying this payment would be accepted as payment in full for the damages, and by accepting it, it would release me from any and all liability. This was a pretty fair contract, I believe, as it was the deal we had already made over the phone, just in writing. I get to the place we suggested as a meetup spot. I give him the cash, and he signs the contract without hardly even reading it and didn't want the copy. This was a red flag to me, but I just assumed he really didn't care about it all that much. So I just sent him the photo of the contract and go back home for some beauty sleep. As you can guess by now, another month goes by with me just living life carefree and not a worry in the world about this stupid car accident. Well, I go to check my mail, and I have a notice from this guy's lawyer that he's suing me for not paying after wrecking his car. This upset me, but I also knew I had plenty of text messages and a contract on my side. I immediately call Brent, and he blocks my number. Luckily enough, my girlfriend works for a lawyer, so I get him updated, and he says he'd love to help. He lets me know I saved myself by writing that contract, as any contract worth over $500 is to be held up in any level court in my state. I immediately get to work on my revenge. I remember on the side of this guy's car, he had a business logo, and I took pictures of the damage. So I hop online and get to the Better Business Bureau to look up who owns this company, thinking that surely he couldn't own the business because he is such an idiot. I was wrong. This guy owns the company, and I can see that he has about 12 one-star reviews, all in dispute because of his shady business practices, telling people it will cost one thing and then charging them 4 times what he said it would. Sound familiar? Remember when he said the shop may charge more than the original $2,403? That's right. He was suing me for $10,000, 4 times what the shop told him it would cost. Unbelievable. He was trying his same sneaky crap on me. My lawyer takes none of this, and we show up to court ready for war. This guy is sleazy. As we get there and all set up, he says, "You ready to give me more of daddy's money?" with a smirk. I guess just because I'm young and drive a nice truck and could afford $2,500. His lawyer gets up and starts trying to say BS from me, hitting and running, and Brent barely got a picture of my license plate, so I tried bullying him into taking a deal for only $2,500 when the damage was clearly more than that. There were obvious holes in his story, and he really didn't have much to say. Just imagine the smile on my face as my lawyer lays out the printouts of our text messages and the physical copy of the contract, which was signed by Brent. His lawyer was ghostly white and looked sick. After laying out all of the evidence, my lawyer pulled out a little hidden gem, the printouts of all the complaints we found on the Better Business Bureau and how he was doing the same thing to me. This was the final nail in the coffin, as the judge said he had seen enough. He asked Brent for any final statements, and Brent said, "I don't even have the $2,500 anymore. Can I get that then, and we will be okay?" Literally admitting to the judge that he had received my money and his story was just a load of crap. I thought his lawyer was gonna lose it. It was beautiful. The judge ended up ruling in my favor and demanded him to pay my legal fees as well as damages and lost wages because I had to miss work to be in court. The absolute sweetest part was that this particular day my crew was on a very high-wage job, and I was technically the one getting paid before I paid them out as subcontractors. This means I was to be paid $475 an hour, and this whole ordeal took about 5 hours. He ended up having to pay me almost $5,000. I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life. Sorry it was so long, I just really felt the need to share. Thank you to anyone who made it this far. The Karen of my building told me her keycard isn't working, demanded I fix her keycard, so I did. This just happened maybe 5 minutes ago, and I think it's hilarious. I'm the facility manager to my building. Everything that happens and goes wrong is my responsibility, so I make sure everything runs smoothly. My boss had made it clear, it's my building and I was hired to not only keep the people in line, but run everything. I'm not a jerk, but I hold people accountable, forcibly but politely. There was no facility manager for a long time before I came along, and both clients and employees ran amok, with no order. In the 4 months I've been here, my boss has praised my performance and has gone to bat for me countless times. She's the best boss I've ever had. I've got a firm but fair approach, and my reputation reflects that. I've got a Karen in the building, and trust me, the name stereotype applies. Who's just a counselor for family services has nothing to do with our group. She likes to complain about everything and gives my boss a headache almost daily. She shares an office with another woman who's unfortunately picking up on her Karen tendencies, Karen in training. I've been doing a keycard audit all week, and I know to leave Karen's keycard alone because she's the only Karen in the building, so her name stands out. I'm missing 75 keycards, lots of former employees having all door access dating all the way back to 2015. Can't have that, so I deleted a lot of them, especially if it had a wacky name or just a room number. However, I did delete Karen in Training's card information because it wasn't under her name. She just came to tell me her keycard wasn't working, and Karen happened to be passing by and overheard it. I went and fixed Karen in Training's keycard, and we went to go check to see if it worked or not. We found Karen outside the office waiting, complaining to my boss that her keycard didn't work either. Karen wandered away, and my boss rolled her eyes, and I smiled, and I told her I would take care of it. After checking to make sure Karen in Training's keycard worked, I went downstairs to check the system, looked up Karen, and wouldn't you know it, her keycard was completely fine. In fact, it showed she had a master keycard. So I changed all of her permissions and limited her back to just her room only. I went upstairs and got my boss's attention because her office is next door to the ladies, and I mouthed, "Listen," and pointed. I opened their door and was all, "Hey Karen, I went and checked your keycard in the system. Everything is good to go. In fact, it said you had a master key to the building, and per the company's orders, since you're not a contractor or a company employee, I can't give you that access, so I had to revoke your status to just this room only. Can't have you bugging people on official business. Wink. Thanks for bringing your keycard to my attention." She started to object that she needed the master keycard because XYZ, and I was all, "Yeah, sorry, maybe before, but I'm the facility manager, and you don't need access to everything except this office, and if you do, it's outside your pay grade, so you'll have to come get me. Okay? Cool, thanks. Bye." And then just closed the door on her mid-sentence. My boss was quietly laughing herself off in the office and gave me an air high five. My girlfriend demands to have the first bite every time I get fast food. I've been living with my girlfriend for the past 6 months. We're both in our early 20s and have an overall great relationship. From well before our relationship began, I've been a big fast food eater. There's an intersection in my city that hosts 7 different fast food restaurants, and I'll frequent basically all of them. Since I do shift work, I'm generally off the clock at around 11 a.m., and then being too tired to cook, I'll hit up a burger joint for a cheeseburger and some fries. My girlfriend always wants to have exactly 1 bite, exclusively the first bite, of every item I order. When I noticed this, I would start by contacting her on my way to the restaurant, asking if she wanted something. Her answer was consistently no, but when I get home and dig in, the crinkling of a fast food bag is like a Pavlov's bell to her. She'll immediately beeline straight for wherever I'm eating and ask if she can have a bite. I've asked if I could just leave her a little at the end. No, she wants the first bite. I've pleaded with her to just let me buy her food. No, she doesn't want to eat that much. I've tried ordering a bit more and letting her polish off the whole burger. No, she'll turn every item into a sampler platter and then throw away the food I bought for her after the first bite if I don't eat it. I don't like it. I don't like this bizarre culinary version of Jew Prime Noctis. Can somebody tell Reddit boy how to pronounce this? For the past few weeks, I've been eating in my car and discreetly disposing of the wrappers. I was just telling her I wasn't hungry after work, but the other day she found a garbage bag full of fast food wrappers in our bin on garbage day, and she's furious at me for lying to her. Am I the jerk for not sharing with her? Not the jerk. Stop hiding. Tell her if she wants food, you'll buy it for her. But her having to have the first bite of anything you eat is over now. If she wants to be mad over it, then let her be mad. Edit. A few things have come up, and the solution to it would be, if she orders food and only takes a single bite and tosses it, then she only gets food if she pays for it herself from now on. Agree. Better to be honest, but draw a hard line no to any sharing. If she wants something, she has to request her own item. I don't let anyone make me feel bad for being unwilling to share my food. Or at least start paying for any food she wastes when you do get her some. OP, you're not the jerk at all. Wasting is another issue, but I think OP needs to put his foot down first. OP needs to establish his boundaries. This is not okay. If he can't say no when she asks, he's essentially enabling her. It's not like he has to watch helplessly as she invades the food. It's his own darn food. He has a choice. Yes, he does offer her compromises, but why should she take them if at the end of the day, she can still get what she wants? None of this can work if he doesn't tell her no. Also, there seems to be deeper issues here than just food. Does she eat anything besides the 1 bite per item of what OP buys? Or does she restrict her diet to just that? The fact that she refused to eat her own portion or meal, even when it's bought for her and brought to her, is very alarming. When she's throwing out perfectly good food for just 1 bite, it's way worse than just a cute quirk. Not the jerk, OP, but next time when you get her fast food, take the first bite before you bring it near her. See how she reacts. Work your way from there. Best of luck. OP. Putting my foot down is not my strong point, as she tends to start debating and getting emotional. But you're right. The only way to stop this weird behavior is to tell her no. If she wants a bite of my cheeseburger, she can pry it from my fingers. What possible argument could she have for needing to have the first bite of your food? You're not the jerk here. Glad you're going to put your foot down. She'll argue that he doesn't love her enough to do this. Apparently, there's something called first bite, best bite, last bite, where you give the person you love the first bite, the best bite, and or the last bite. My partner often gives me any of these, but I never demand it. He just volunteers, and I'll volunteer the same to him. Like if he's cooking eggs, he eats the ugly ones and gives me the pretty ones. If we're sharing fries, the last fry ends up on the plate for ages because we're both leaving it for the other person. When we eat at restaurants and order different foods, we offer a taste of ours before digging in. But expecting and demanding a first bite of your partner's hamburger when you're not eating and when you could have had your own, that smacks of territory marking. I am not here for it.
Bruh, whoever knew people were so weird about food?
You're telling me. If you wanted the first bite of my burger, I'd tell you to go forget yourself.
That's why I spit in your food, Reddit boy.
Am I the jerk for just liking my coffee the way I like it? I live near a coffee shop that operates from a cart. They are a tiny shop with usually one person on, but sometimes two. Their cart is on the property of a restaurant and is owned by the restaurant, but slightly different. And I'm not a fan of the restaurant, but the cart coffee is honestly some of the best I've ever tasted. They run from 8 to 3 or so, but it usually suits me to come in around 2:50 to 3, but occasionally much earlier. Today I came just at 3 and saw the barista was still serving, so I hopped in the queue, with a group of women following behind me. As she started steaming the person in front of me's drink, she announced to the queue that they could order the coffee from the restaurant because the cafe was no longer serving past 3. Bear in mind it's 3:01-ish, and I had probably been in the queue right at 3, if not a few seconds before. Let me preface by saying the restaurant coffee is just not good. They say it's the same, but it's made by the waitstaff, not baristas, and it really isn't what I'm there for. I also am very health conscious and was mindful of going into a restaurant during lockdown just to order a coffee. The women behind me must not have minded because they went into the restaurant, but I figured I'd ask for my usual. The barista turned around to finish serving the person ahead of me and didn't even look at me. Bear in mind, I know her since I come here a lot. She knows my usual, always smiles and chats, and I've even asked her for some treats as she was locking up once, and she said she had wrapped them up for the night a while ago, but was extremely apologetic and remembers to offer me treats every time. When the person left, she finally looked at me. I ordered my usual and she repeated, "I'll just ask if you could order inside since I've got to close up out here." I asked if she'd make an exception since I'm lockdown conscious, and she said just this once, but seemed off. I thanked her again for serving me, and she said no worries, but as she was closing up, I was sitting in their outdoor area on my laptop, and she would not look or smile at me as she usually does, and was barely looking my direction, even though it was like 3:05 by the time she made my order, 2 minutes later than if I hadn't ordered. I know what people will say about going to a place at closing time, but I was in the queue just in time. I think she would have happily made the exception for me if it weren't for the group behind me, and only asked us all to go because there were 3 or 4 of them. And I'm just wondering if I'm missing something because she acted happy to serve me 1 minute, but was then colder than usual. You're the jerk. You keep going at closing time and have repeatedly asked for special treatment. Asked them to stay open past closing for you, requesting free treats. You're incredibly entitled. Of course they'll be friendly if you're a regular and it happened once. You'd still be a jerk for just once, but they'd act nice out of professional courtesy. But repeated behavior like this definitely puts a strain on their tolerance. Stop going right at closing time, even if it suits you best. Either go earlier or not at all. If you can go earlier, but you go intentionally at closing, you're an even bigger jerk. Stop asking for them to stay overtime just for you. You aren't special. Stop asking for free treats. Again, you aren't special. Stop being an entitled jerk. Edit to add. The treats bit is even worse. OP went back to the barista and asked for treats at 3:45 after the barista had already closed out the till. Also, OP has either not been tipping or not tipping extra even after making them work over. OP is a giant jerk. Edit. About the free treats comment. OP didn't specifically ask for free treats, but in the comments, OP states that they didn't ask for the treats until they saw the barista leaving at 3:45 and after the till had been closed. They didn't ask for treats when they ordered their coffee, which was already late. If you watch a barista close up the till, see them leaving, and then ask for treats as a second, even later order after the cart is long closed, the implication there is definitely that you're asking for them for free. If OP really had intended to pay for the treats, they seem to go to the cart every day, they easily could have paid the next day. Oh my goodness. I missed the part about the free treats. That is so annoying. As a former barista, I know this lady. The customer who thinks you're friends because you're friendly and expects special treatment, like the lady who walked behind the counter and started making her own drink once, saying, "Don't worry, I live here." Remembers to offer me treats? The entitlement in that statement. Is OP a dog? Dogs are generally more appreciative, but maybe. You weren't just in time, per your story. You jumped in the queue at exactly 3 p.m., so probably a minute or two after, knowing they close at 3 p.m. The barista asked you to go inside because she needed to close and you refused. She caved so as to not upset you, likely knowing you'd react poorly as a regular. And based on the previous encounter you mentioned with the treats, she's probably intimidated by you. She wouldn't smile at you as she was closing because you're the jerk. You held her up, and depending on how strict her schedule is, you likely set her back a few minutes and could have caused issues for her. Some companies are very strict about overtime. Maybe she had to pick up her kid. Maybe she's on the way to another job, etc. Edit. This story does not match the title at all. Add that to the list of reasons you're the jerk. Coworker thinks my personal out-of-work activities are not as important as her kids. I'm a married 36-year-old woman with no plans to have kids. I recently had an issue with a coworker where our boss emailed her and I to ask if one of us could cover an evening call. It's a 9-to-5 job, but we occasionally have evening calls due to collaborators in a different time zone. The coworker asked me to do it because her son had a soccer game, but I said that I can't do it because I had a volleyball game. She said that I should do it because the soccer game is for her kid and my volleyball game is just for fun. I said that respectfully, my outside of work commitments are not less important than hers because I don't have kids, and that she should take the call because I had taken the last two. She scoffed at me, and I know that other people around the office have been gossiping about me and saying that it was super messed up that I made her miss her kid's soccer game. I think that it's incredibly important to support working mothers. I am always more than happy to accommodate the schedules of the mothers I work with when it doesn't cause a significant inconvenience to me. For example, some coworkers leave early to pick up their kids. Our company is great about that, and I'm happy to work project schedules around that. I also would have taken that call if I hadn't had a conflict, as long as it wasn't a pattern of me taking significantly more evening calls. I talked to a friend about this, who's a mother, and she said that I should have just done it, because people who don't have kids really should have more empathy for working parents, and we don't understand how hard it is. I said respectfully that I do understand that working mothers have much more stressful lives than I do, which is why I decided not to be a mother. I also said that I can have respect and empathy for working mothers and also value my time and choices equally. She similarly scoffed and said that I don't understand. Am I the jerk here? Follow-up. Thanks everyone for the support. I'd like to acknowledge that a lot of the support is coming from working mothers, which I appreciate. Almost all of this has been respectful, but for anyone bashing mothers generally or using mean terms, I don't need your support. Not the jerk. I love it when people say, "But you don't have a family," as though people were hatched from pods. Having kids isn't a free pass to get out of things you'd prefer not to do. It ticked me off when I was single and newly married. Like, if I don't have my contractual time off, when am I supposed to start one? I took my first vacation last week in 2 years, and on my return this morning, one of my non-friend coworkers messaged me and was like, "What could you possibly do for a week and a half with no kids at home?" Like, dude, I have dogs to go out with, books to read, Reddit to argue on, naps to take, Sims to control, and a lockdown to hide from. OP, I'm a mom of a tween. Your coworker and your friend are being jerks. It's unfathomable to me to use my choice to have a kid as an excuse to expect my colleagues to cover for me. Do I want to be there? Yep. Do I have to miss sometimes? Also yep. I wonder if her husband is pressuring people to cover his work so he can attend, or if she expects him to. Not the jerk, but it wasn't smart to say what your conflict was. You didn't have to justify it. All you had to say was, "Sorry, I really can't. I have a prior commitment." No is a complete sentence, especially if she had done the last 2 calls. Not the jerk. This isn't like her kid was hurt or in a hospital, so she can't come in. It's a hobby versus a hobby, and clearly her turn to pick up the shift. Enjoy your volleyball game. Am I the jerk for ordering fried pork intestine at a Chinese restaurant my girlfriend took me to? Me, 24 male, and my girlfriend, 23 female, of 2 years, went out to an Asian restaurant yesterday. I'm a white guy and she's Asian, and she had been saying all before we went how I shouldn't be afraid to try the real Chinese food that they have there, and I kept saying I was looking forward to it because I love trying new things. But every time I said that, she just raised an eyebrow and went, "We'll see." Well, we got there, and the menu was in Mandarin with English subtitles, and they had all kinds of things on it I'd never even imagined. It looked awesome. I ordered jellyfish tentacles over vinegar as an appetizer, and she just went, "Okay, I get it, haha," ordering the weirdest thing on the menu just to prove me wrong. And she wouldn't believe me when I really enjoyed the dish. She tried some and just went, "Whoa, oh my gosh, there's no way you like that." And I just went, "Well, would you like to come take a seat inside my brain so you can tell for sure?" And she just rolled her eyes. I ordered the fried pork intestine. I've had tripe and I liked that, so I figured this would be cool, and the waiter was trying to discourage me from ordering it because he didn't think I would like it. As soon as he said that, my girlfriend just pounced and was like, "Yeah, no, he wouldn't like that. Don't order that. Order something you would like. Order fried rice or something." And I was like, "No, I want to try fried pork intestine, and I'm ordering fried pork intestine. I'm not here to try fried rice. You can get that anywhere. I'm here for something I can't get anywhere else." And the waiter just cautiously took down the order, and girlfriend was like, "Well, you didn't have to be like that." I didn't even raise my voice. So I finally get the pork intestine. One of the chefs pokes his head out of the kitchen to watch me eat it, and it was incredible. I asked my girlfriend if she wanted any. She made a weird face and said, "No, obviously you went and ordered the grossest thing possible just to make a point," and accused me of being passive-aggressive. I ate it all and wished there was more, and all the way home she was saying how I am passive-aggressive and she can't believe I did what I did. And when we got home, I just said, "Look, I can't believe you're upset that I ordered food from a place you took me to, and you're even more upset that I liked it." She said, "If you're gonna be like this about my culture, then you are never meeting my parents." I mean, I don't know. Maybe I was being passive-aggressive and just didn't realize it. People can be passive-aggressive unconsciously, right? I thought I was ordering what interested me and eating food I enjoyed, and I'm probably gonna go back to that place without her because the food was straight up fire. But maybe I should have ordered something else so that it didn't look like I was bragging about how I can handle Asian food. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like she should be with a guy who shares her culture so that she can be with someone she believes. Not the jerk. Sounds like she's the one being passive-aggressive, to be honest. She tells you that you shouldn't be afraid of ordering real Chinese food and then gets upset with you? Very weird reaction. I totally agree. Why did she take you there if she wanted you to either order something more American or not like what you got? Feels like this was kind of a weird setup. It does feel like a weird setup. I agree. Not the jerk, OP. It's very odd that she was annoyed that you were willing to try new things. I mean, isn't that the point of having authentic restaurants? Exactly. He was never going to win. If he ordered fried rice, she would have given him crap for not trying something more adventurous. She set him up to fail. Not the jerk. Your girlfriend is overreacting. Yeah, pork intestines sound gross, but hey, kudos to you for enjoying the heck out of it. I'm sure as long as the chef cooked it right. Maybe I'm just the out-of-touch southerner, but pork intestines are just chitterlings. Is it that weird of a dish outside of the South? Mind you, I've never had them, religious reasons, but I've grown up in a community that would eat them. Not the jerk. But you've been dating 2 years, and I feel like I'm missing some context about why she was surprised at this stage of your relationship that you enjoy trying new things. OP, that surprised me too. I mean, I like sushi and mainstream Asian foods, so there was a range of Asian foods she knew I liked. But I guess she just didn't think it trespassed beyond the mainstream. She knows I like trying new things. It's been a thing before. I guess she just didn't know how far that went. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
This is what's called a red flag. Leave her now, boyo, or you're gonna be dealing with this weird crap for the rest of your life.
Am I the jerk for having my husband's friend kicked out for bringing his 4 kids to my child-free wedding? My husband, who's 30, and I, who am also 30, got married 2 weeks ago. We decided on a child-free wedding due to venue choice, food choice, alcohol, location, etc. We included this rule in every invitation, including the one my husband's bestie, Leo, who's 35, who is a widower with 4 kids. Leo complained to my husband about the rule, but that was that. At the wedding, my husband said he was worried his friend Leo may not come since I refused to let him bring his kids. But about almost an hour into the wedding, we start hearing noise from a distance. We look closely and see Leo standing there with his 4 kids dressed nicely. He was arguing with the staff about the kids not being allowed. I felt horrible because the staff was drilling that this was a child-free wedding and that the kids needed to leave. But Leo kept arguing and went as far as to yell out my husband's name, telling him to come tell the staff off since it's his wedding. I was so upset and embarrassed, but I kept my composure and went over to talk to Leo. I told him to either get the kids somewhere else and come back or just leave. He acted offended, saying this is his best friend's wedding and he was invited to it. I said I was sorry, but the rule is followed by everybody, and everybody should respect that. He argued about how he wasn't just a random guest, but was family, but I said it still applies. I insisted he make his choice, but he doubled down, talking about how he couldn't find a babysitter and how he shouldn't have to miss his best friend's wedding. I had the staff escort him and his kids out after he kept pushing, which led to some of my husband's friends to complain, saying Leo has special circumstances because he's a widower, and it's essentially my fault for not providing babysitting options for guests. Wedding went on after that, but my husband was angry. He said that this is his best friend and that I just caused him to miss the wedding. He said Leo stopped answering his calls until today and has not responded to his messages because of what I did. Now my husband believes that I have just ruined his relationship with his friend when I could have just made an exception for him and the kids since they were there already. Am I the jerk? Edit. Just so you know, my husband was on board with this rule, but wanted me to make an exception for his friend and his friend only. My family and friends would have felt deeply hurt if I said yes. Not the jerk in the least. The rule was well telegraphed in advance. Leo just showing up was an absolutely jerk move. I'm convinced that, given his reaction, perhaps your husband encouraged Leo to just show up without your knowledge. If that is true, he is also the jerk. The husband doesn't seem to have been on board with the whole no kids thing, and based on the friend's reaction as well as the husband's, I almost wonder if there wasn't a bit of a smear campaign against OP among the friends, and as you suggested, the husband suggested Leo to show up. Yes, it sure sounds that way. OP using the word we several times in her submission, referring to the no kids policy, but given husband's reaction, it sure sounds like he wasn't on board and may well have engaged in some subterfuge, which backfired when OP held her ground. Not the greatest start to a marriage, in my opinion. You don't have a Leo problem, you have a husband problem. If he wasn't on board with no kids, the time to say so was before the invitations were sent. Imagine all the anger and hurt from others if you had let Leo's kids stay. I suppose one compromise would have been to let them stay through the ceremony only, but that still would have created hard feelings among others. You are not the jerk, your husband and Leo are both jerks. A "don't you know who I am" story. Like a month or so ago, I'm prepping the bar before the restaurant I work at opens, when the phone starts ringing. I grab the bar phone and answer. "Thank you for calling our restaurant. This is Sarbach. How can I help you?" A woman answers. "I'd like to make a reservation for 4 people at 5 p.m. Now it's a Saturday, and we're always booked for Saturdays by Thursday. So I tell her, "Unfortunately, we're booked tonight, and any reservation would have to be for after 8:30 tonight." "Are you serious?" I've never had anyone respond like that on the phone before, and I don't know what to say for a fat minute while I'm trying to process her tone. "I'm sorry, but we're booked at the time." "Are you seriously saying no to me?" she hisses. Now, I think she's messing with me and offer a chuckle before repeating that we're booked. "I just can't believe you're saying no to me. You tell everyone in that restaurant who you're saying no to." I'm too stunned to say anything helpful, so I say, "Okay," and hang up. I turn to my manager and ask, "What the heck?" We have a pretty good relationship, so he just laughs, not knowing what happened over the phone. So I tell him, "Some lady just called asking for a reservation, and I told her we can't do it. And she asked if I was seriously saying no to her." He asks who it was. We have caller ID for most customers, and I tell him that I didn't recognize the name, which I didn't. Then the phone rings again. I tell him to answer it in case it's the lady again. It was, except when my manager answers, she tries to tell him it's her birthday, a detail she did not try with me. Regardless if it really was her birthday, we still couldn't have fit her party in on such short notice. My manager says we can't make the reservation, and she goes off with the "I can't believe you're saying no to me" BS and hangs up. We take the name and number from the caller ID and put it into the reservation system to see if she's been in before, and we even called my boss, the owner, to see if he knew her. And nope, nothing. We still don't know who she was, but we still laugh about it. I was really looking forward to finding out who she was. Me too, Karen. Me too. Am I the jerk for calling my brother's new girlfriend out? My brother, 33 male, has been dating his new girlfriend for about 4 months. She seemed like a nice girl, except she just doesn't like my other brother's wife. I've heard her talk a lot of crap about her. That she's weird and her hair color is ugly, just stuff like that. My brother's wife is a weird character, but she's a sweet person that changes her hair color often. Might sound biased after saying that. I don't say anything the times I've heard her talk crap about her. She usually says it discreetly later on to my brother. Yesterday, we had a family dinner at a nice restaurant. My brother's wife came in wearing a dress. Truth be said, it was tight and low cut. Nobody judged her, and we had a great time. My brother and his girlfriend rode with me and my sister. We rode together to the restaurant. While we were driving, my brother's girlfriend randomly says,
Did you see her in that dress? She looked nasty.
There was a long, awkward silence before I said, "Excuse me?" She says,
Who wears a dress like that to dinner?
My sister looks at me to say something. I say it's none of your business, and I'm pretty tired of you talking crap about her. She again says that it's the truth. I say, okay, let's see how bad you are, and we ride in silence. We meet up at my parents' house, and we walk in, and I go up to my brother's wife and tell her that my brother's girlfriend has something to say about her. She goes red in the face and calls me a jerk for instigating. My brother and his girlfriend leave. Everyone asked what I was talking about, and I told them what she said. My parents told me I should have left it alone. My sister says I was right, but I also was in the wrong. My girlfriend praised me for it. I just want to know, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I like your style. You stuck up for someone you care about. She messed around and found out. Not the jerk. You know, I completely agree, except that he probably embarrassed the brother's wife. She didn't need to be told that people were to say that about her in front of her entire set of in-laws. I'm not saying he's the jerk, but I feel like there's a way to do this without publicly humiliating the brother's wife. Nope, this is exactly how you deal with people that talk crap behind others' backs. But then again, I'm biased because this is exactly how I handle it. I have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to bullies, the outright bullies, and the gossip bullies like this one. If you're big and bold when the person isn't around, be big and bold when the target is in your face. No excuses. Solid, not the jerk. Trust me, I don't know where your rental is. I'm just enjoying my coffee. While my husband collects I don't work here lady incidents like a politician collecting bribes, I only have 3 of my own. This is one of them. This happened in the spring of 2018. My mother had traveled abroad to visit one of her relatives, so when she was flying back, I went to get her. We live about 3 hours away from the airport. Because our oldest was recovering from a stomach bug, hubby decided to stay home with the kids and I would get my mother and bring her home. My mother's flight was scheduled to arrive at 13:15, but when I got there, I found out they had a 2-hour delay and I had to wait. I thought, all right, I'll enjoy a coffee while I wait, and notified my husband. The weather was good, low 20s Celsius, with no clouds, and decided to have my coffee on the outside patio of a coffee shop. I grabbed my tablet and, because the airport is a bit windy, a yellow windbreaker. And apparently, that was the problem. I was reading my book on my tablet, enjoying my coffee, wearing my yellow windbreaker, when I heard a, "Hey, you!" I didn't think it was directed at me and continued reading. Then I feel someone looming above me and a, "I'm talking to you." I looked up to see a man looking down at me. The following exchange had happened. Cast, we've got me. We've got Chad, the entitled jerk. We've got Karen, entitled jerk's wife. We've got police officers 1 and 2. Me. Yes? Chad. Where's my rental? Thinking that he was asking where the rental companies had desks, I replied that we were on the other side of a rival's area. Chad. Okay, be a good employee and bring it here. Me. I will certainly not do that. I don't work for the rentals. Yes, you do. Now go and get it. Me. No. The thing goes back and forth like we are 4-year-olds when Karen inserts herself in the conversation. Karen. Honey, what's taking so long? Chad to Karen. This employee here doesn't want to bring us our rental. Karen comes and grabs my windbreaker's lapel and puts her face uncomfortably close to mine. Karen. Listen, you little jerk. Me and my husband are very good clients. I don't care if you're on your break, but if you don't bring the car in 3 minutes, we will get you fired. Me, extremely upset at this point. Listen, jerk, take your paws off me, or we will have trouble. Karen. Oh, you threaten me? Me? Oh, you are so getting fired. At that point, she swings her arm, hitting the coffee, spilling it on the table, missing the tablet, and on me. Me standing up. Buzz off, jerk! Go find your own rental. Karen at that point slapped me, while her husband was screaming at me. I flipped and slapped her back, which initiated a fight. When the initial argument began, a couple of bystanders had taken notice. The shouting had attracted a crowd, and when the fight started, somebody called the cops. 2 officers came and separated us. Officer 1. What happened? Chad. The employee refused to help us and then attacked my wife. Me. I don't work here, you jerk. And your wife attacked me. Officer 2. Madam, language please. Karen. I want to press charges. Officer 1. Okay, all of you are coming with us. We ended up in the airport police station. One officer went to get the manager of the rental company, and the other reviewed the tapes with his boss. The rental company manager verified I wasn't an employee. They wear white shirts and black ties and a lanyard with their access ID. I was wearing a Cthulhu t-shirt and jeans. The cameras verified the attack. I pressed charges and left to get my mother. My wife expects me to pay her parents' mortgage. So I, 32 male, have been married to my wife, Allie, 33 female, for 5 years. Her dad was a restaurant/business owner, and her mom was a stay-at-home mom. Both of Allie's sisters got married to very successful guys and had kids. At the beginning of our relationship, I was starting my own construction business. I wasn't making a ton of money, and Allie's parents hated it. Her sisters always tried to set Allie up with their husband's friends. Her father disapproved of our wedding and forced Allie to ask for a prenup if she wanted help with the wedding. Allie also asked for us to have separate finances. We've had a loving marriage so far, even with the rocky start. But whenever she visits her family, I tend to not go. So Allie's dad made some bad investments, got did over by his partner, and his business took a big loss. Due to this, him and his wife are struggling to retire like they had hoped to. Allie's sister came up with a big surprise for their parents for their 40th wedding anniversary. They would pay off their house and send them on a vacation to celebrate retirement. Whole thing would cost them around $30,000. Each sister would be responsible for $10,000. Allie has always paid for the things regarding her family, and I pay for mine. She gets along with her parents, however, and will buy things for them sometimes. So Allie is a school teacher, and when she found out the plan, she asked me for $8,000. I literally laughed. I said her parents were awful to me, thought I was a broke loser, and you asked for a prenup, that our finances were separate because she asked for it and I don't plan on changing it. Allie said she didn't have the money right now, but would pay me back, which I know is BS and isn't something I'd consider anyway, as I intend to not help her family out anyway. Allie and her sisters got on a Zoom call to talk about it. I was called into the meeting and asked by the sisters to have some empathy. I told them I made my decision and then was berated. Her sisters went off how I'm holding a grudge still, how I should be willing to help my wife, and how it's just money. I said how neither of them have worked a day in their life. One's a stay-at-home mom, and the other divorced their doctor husband and gets alimony. How neither of them gave me a chance 6 years ago. How neither of them are using their money either, just using their husbands like they always do. That Allie asked for a prenup because their dad thought I was a loser, and now he needs my help? That Allie should have managed her money better. I told them both never to ask me for a favor again. After we got off the call, Allie said she feels like I'm being unfair and petty, that I've helped my parents out before, which is true. I bought my dad a new $30,000 truck about a year ago. I said that's because my silly business took off and I can afford to do those things, and that her parents are her responsibility and I don't owe them a thing. My parents think, while I'm not in the wrong, laughing at my wife's request was kind of a jerk move. Am I the jerk? Edit. Yes, her parents tried apologizing, but I have a feeling this is only because my business took off. They try to invite me to come to holidays and stuff, but I don't respond. Not the jerk. She asked for separate finances, she got them. Not the jerk. They messed around and found out. The laughing seems natural given the circumstances. If it was for something that was a need, it may be different. A vacation and mortgage paid so they can retire early? Nah. Not the jerk for not wanting to give your in-laws a penny, but you forgot that your wife still chose you. Even though your father-in-law would not approve of you, your sisters-in-law pressured her to consider other guys. You must have forgotten to take your wife's feelings into account, and your perception of her makes you the jerk. So hold on to your money, but apologize to your wife for your behavior towards her. I love you, bud, but I'm doing you over. I'm a millwright who specializes in rebuilding natural gas turbines. I run with a very top-tier caliber crew where everyone has a role to fill. My role is overseeing anything that's lifted with a crane. My technical title is rigging. If a load falls, it's my fault. If someone gets hurt while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. If equipment is damaged while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. The incident in question happened about 2 years ago, but we'll need to go back a couple years further to get to the backstory. I was a fresh member of the crew and had demonstrated competency in rigging. So after roughly 6 months with this group, my superintendent put me in charge of all rigging. I wasn't the fastest rigging, but I was safety focused and insisted on doing it right every time, even if it took a little longer. This meant that my superintendent didn't have to watch over every rigging task and could go relax because I had it under control. Another millwright joined the crew about the same time I did. We'll call him Larry. We didn't get along at first, but after a few months, we became friends. Larry was the act now, think later type, much like the superintendent I travel under. Larry was prone to making mistakes because of that attitude, but he was very fast and worked like a mule at all times, and I respected that. He wasn't especially skilled in any one area, so he had no special position. That meant sometimes he'd get put on less glamorous work, and I soon learned he was very jealous of my position as the rigging. At times, he would make comments like, "I'm gonna take your job." Not in getting me fired, but bumping me down a rung, and him taking my spot as rigging. He came up behind me while I was looking over my checklist to point out something I may not have checked yet. If supervision was near, he'd make sure he was heard. At this point, I should mention this. I stick out like a sore thumb on this crew. I was raised in a very strict cult, but in my mid-20s, I realized what was going on and left, at great cost. Losing my family and friends because of strict shunning rules the cult practices. Some of the stricter things stuck with me, like I've never been intoxicated, I don't use tobacco, I speak professionally, without slang or colloquialisms for the most part. These traits stick out from a crew of men that travel a road and work in harsh environments away from home for months on end. But Larry, he fits right in. Larry quickly became the superintendent's puppy, bringing him gifts of his favorite alcohol, staying out late after work with him, even rooming with him on the road. I, on the other hand, leave work, hit the gym, cook my food for the next day, and make sure I get at least 6 hours of sleep so I can perform the next day. I realize that puts me at a disadvantage socially in the workplace, but I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Anyways, fast forward about 18 months. We're starting a project just before lockdown hits. About 2 weeks into the job, I have to attend a mandatory class through my union. It's a 40-hour class and in a different state, so I'll be gone for pretty much an entire week with travel time. I get permission from supervision and leave, with Larry rigging in my absence. A few days later, I'm laying in bed stressing out about the final test I have to take the next morning. If the test isn't passed, the entire week is wasted. I always psych myself out before a test, but in reality, I don't have anything to worry about, as I'm a good student and test well. My phone goes off. It's a text from Larry. "I love you, bud, but I'm doing you over." I reply, "What are you talking about?" "When you get back, I'll be the rigging. You can do the crap work from now on." I'm not proud of the response I came back with, but it's how I truly felt in the moment. Be careful about doing over someone smarter than you. I'm far from the smartest person you'll ever meet, but I do enjoy reading, studying, and learning. And being smarter than Larry wasn't an accomplishment by any stretch of the imagination. The next morning, I passed the test and headed back to the job, where Larry had in fact usurped my position as rigging and was lording it over me as I went about doing the tasks he normally would do. To be completely honest, it was kind of like a vacation at first. Get paid nearly $40 an hour to clean parts or torque flanges with no stress? Sign me up. But I was upset. I was upset because I knew I did my job better than he would. I knew that he got along better with his superintendent because of their similar personalities, but I didn't feel that I should lose my position simply because Larry had more in common with our superintendent than I did. Regardless of that, I was now dealt these cards and I had to play them. Just 3 days after I got back from class, though, the job was shut down. Lockdown was just now sweeping the country. Out of an abundance of caution, the plant shut down the project until further notice. We were sent home for about 3 days and then called out to an emergency shutdown where a turbine had crashed. We roll out and are on the job 48 hours later in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. We get right to work. On this particular unit, you pull the entire roof off in 2 sections with a crane to open the enclosure. Compared to many things we lift in a project like this, the roof weighs very little. The turbine rotor may weigh over 100,000 pounds, but the roof usually only weighs around 7,000 pounds. Lightweight. But it is large, and there are critical parts around the roof that can be damaged if not lifted carefully. Typical procedure is to be on top of the roof after it's unbolted, be in a full-body harness, and tied off to an approved anchor point capable of holding at least 5,000 pounds per OSHA regulations. We then slowly take the weight off of the roof with the crane until it's floating, and then climb down off of it and continue the lift until it's set on the ground or on a truck to be moved. The superintendent instructs me to go on the roof with Larry and assist him. Do whatever Larry tells you to do. Okay, boss. I put on my harness and climb to the top and begin to assess the situation. The rigging to lift the roof is 4 5-ton chain falls. It's capable of safely holding 20 tons, well over the weight of the roof. The crane is also well overrated for this lift, and with the boom extended all the way out in order to clear another building on the way to the ground, Larry has it all rigged up, but no tension on the wire rope slings. And then I notice his crucial mistake. He has forgot to account for boom deflection. When a crane takes the weight of a load, the boom flexes down. Depending on the crane setup and the weight of the load, it can mean that while your crane hook might be centered in your load with no weight on the hook, once you get the weight off the load on the crane hook could be anywhere from a few inches to a number of feet off center. Which means that when the load comes off the ground, it swings. Swinging is bad, always. Enough weight swinging could tip the crane, crash into equipment, crash into a person. It's very dangerous. At this point, I start calculating. Is this weight enough, even swinging, to tip the crane? No, not even close. Is it enough to break a chain fall? No, not even close. Are there any people working around us that could get hurt? Nope, it's just us. Is there any equipment that could be damaged if it swings? Yes, an electrical control panel, which has all power shut off to it and has been disconnected, is in the swing path. I decide to let Larry do this to himself. He looks at me and asks what I think. I tell him, "This is your show, boss." He asks what I mean. I look him in the eye and draw my finger across my throat. He gets nervous because he knows exactly what I mean. Starts double-checking everything. He still doesn't notice the boom deflection. After a couple minutes, he decides I must be talking trash and proceeds with the lift. I stop him and remind him to tie off with his harness. He doesn't realize it, but we're about to go for a ride. Generally, when I'm rigging, I first find out what the thing I'm rigging to weighs. It's a vital piece of information. If I know what it weighs, I can have the crane operator track how much weight he has on the crane, and I'll be able to know when the object should start to pick up. If we get to over 10% more than the object should weigh, there may be something stopping it from moving, and we need to stop and reassess the situation. Rigging could fail. The object you're lifting could jump into the sky. All kinds of mayhem may ensue if a hidden bolt holding something together breaks because you used too much force to lift it. I ask Larry if he knows how much the roof weighs. He doesn't. I do, but I don't tell him. He starts signaling the crane to slowly hoist up. The operator complies and starts lifting. I'm watching the boom get pulled more and more off center. We're probably 2 feet from the center of the load at this point, meaning a swing that could travel nearly 4 feet. I stop Larry and ask him to see how much weight is on the crane. 11,000 pounds, 4,000 more than what it should weigh. This roof is in a bind because we're not picking it straight up, but at an angle. It's either not going to move or we're about to fly. I brace myself. Hoist up slowly, Larry calls over the radio. Boom! The whole roof shoots a good 2 feet into the air and swings wildly towards the control panel. Larry and I are riding it like pirates in the crow's nest of a hurricane. We crash into the control panel, bending it over at a 45-degree angle, destroying most of its components. People start pouring out of the nearby trailers to see what the commotion is all about. The crane operator is yelling over the radio, asking what the heck just happened. I'm smiling. Larry is shaking. He sees me smiling and knows that I knew. We get the roof set on the ground and are met by our superintendent. He's chewing Larry out hard. He gets to me and asks why I let it happen. I just say, I just did what Larry told me to do. The superintendent is no dummy. He's seen a thing or two and knows exactly what went down. Larry is demoted and I'm reinstalled as rigging immediately. And a few shifts later, it's all smoothed over. Larry and I are actually good friends now. We've been through a lot together and have each other's backs these days. He's now the foreman on our crew and lets me do my thing. Feeling your way to the top is still a valid way of progressing in my field, but I'm happy for him. He's actually good at it. And I guess that's all there is to say about that. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my unborn son my husband's last name? Hello. I, female 26, have been married to my husband, male 31, for 3 years, and we're expecting a baby boy together. When I married my husband, I kept my maiden name, which he was perfectly okay with. We already discussed this and agreed that any future kids we have will automatically take his last name. His family considers this a huge deal, and I decided to just go with it. But recently, I started thinking about it a lot more and figured that it would be unfair for my unborn son to take my husband's family's name and not mine. I talked to my family, and they said my husband and in-laws are ridiculous to push this on me without a compromise, expecting I go with it. So I went home and told my husband that I've changed my mind about the last name thing and want to either have both our last names combined or my last name to be given to our son. He was confused, saying we had an agreement, and then asked what was the cause of this sudden change of mind. I told him, and he said I can't just do that, and called me selfish when I pointed out that I'm the mother. I get a say too. We went back and forth on this, and he said no way he and his family will let me do this to his son, as if my last name is a disgrace. We had a fight, and we stopped talking after this. He said that I broke and violated my part of the deal, and I should just deal with it now, but I won't accept it. Am I the jerk? Wow, there are a lot of men coming out of the woodwork and trying to shame you into quietly accepting the mistreatment here. You are allowed to change your mind on things. Sometimes a hypothetical situation is a different level of importance than an actual situation. Your husband has a right to his feelings, but so do you. A hyphenated name is a great compromise. I personally gave my kids their father's last name just because I hated my last name. But if I had liked it, I would have kept it and for sure given it to any kids I grew and birthed. I now get called Mrs. Husband's full name, which I cannot stand, but that's a whole nother aspect of the mistreatment we face. Worry about your own department. Okay. I've worked at a national grocery chain for the past decade plus in various roles along the way. A few years ago, I was at one of the first stores in the entire company to have online ordering. I'm sure you've seen it near you. Order online, come to the store, we bring it out to you. When it first rolled out, I learned very early how to do every stage of the process, even though it wasn't my job title. It impacts everyone in the store, so I wanted to know the ins and outs of it so that I would be ready for what it meant for me. Early last November, my current store started doing online ordering. They couldn't get anyone to transfer from nearby stores, so they had to hire an entirely new crew and send them other places to be trained. This training only lasted a few days, then the system went live. Even the department head was one of these new hires. No one knew what they were doing. Whenever someone pulls up to get their order, a loud doorbell in the pickup office rings. This office is right by my department in a major hallway, so I can hear it. In the first week, this doorbell would ring and no one would come back to the department to get the order. They'd just keep shopping for the order they were working on. They had a phone on them that also chimed, but they ignored it. This led to long wait times and unhappy customers. I started paging over the intercom anytime a customer was waiting for pickup. I would get orders ready, so the pickup clerks just had to take them out, whatever. My department never suffered for this help. It was something I could do quickly and efficiently to help keep them afloat. Well, one time a customer called the store directly and I happened to answer it. She said her pickup time was at 1. She got there at 1 and she had been waiting for 30 minutes. She was upset. I got her name and checked the computer and saw that the shopping for her order wasn't even complete yet, and none of the pickers were shopping for that order. They were picking orders that weren't due for pickup for another 3 hours. I called my store manager and told her what was going on. She yelled in my ear, "Why are you even answering the phone for them? You need to stop making pages, stop hovering over that department, and worry about your own." Not what I expected, considering I had the most experience with online ordering, and these new hires had no idea what they were doing. My store manager knew this, but I said, "All right," and I hung up on her. I picked up the phone call with the customer and told her it would be a while and that I was unable to help her further. I also recommended she come in and speak with the store manager if she had any concerns. I went back to my department and started working. It only took a few minutes before I heard the store manager being paged to the front, and the shouting that ensued could be heard in every corner of the sales floor. But it doesn't end there. As I said, this program was rolling out in November, and Thanksgiving was just a few weeks away. I stopped helping in any way. No overhead pages, no staging orders, no answering phone calls, nothing. The amount of orders skyrocketed, and the department was constantly incredibly far behind. They routinely had to call customers and tell them they'd have to come later in the day or even the next morning. Pick time plummeted, wait time skyrocketed, efficiency ground to a halt. It was horrible. And I just kept my department in tiptoe shape, giving the new hires sympathetic looks when I would see their beleaguered faces. Eventually, the store manager came to me and asked for my help. I'd love to help, but I was told, rather emphatically, to worry about my own department. Now, I knew that I was in no position to say no. If the store manager told me to do something that I was trained to do, saying no was insubordination and a fireable offense. But that didn't stop me from reminding her that it was her who put them in that situation to begin with. I took great pleasure in the sigh she gave and the genuine apology that followed. I accepted her apology and went to help. The workers are much better trained now, and for the most part, the department is running smoothly. I no longer have to help as much as I did in those early months, but my store manager is happy to have me when the need for help arises. My entitled nephews stole from me one too many times. In a prior post in a different subreddit, I asked if I was the bad guy for wanting to call the police on my nephews for stealing from me, and the overwhelming support I got made me realize that standing my ground was the best thing for me to do. About midway last week, when I came home from work, I noticed a shed door was open and the padlock that I used to keep it shut with was broken. And I had a lot of bags full of soda cans in there. I and my friends tend to drink a lot of soda, so I built up a lot of cans over the course of about a year. And I was about to cash them in at the bottle drop soon because I like big payouts. It's 10 cents a can where I live after all. But there was more than just my bags of cans missing from the shed too. They took my gardening shears, a steel rake, 2 shovels, one of them being one of those folding camping ones, a full 2-gallon gas can, a cheap power drill I got for like $5 used, an electric hedge trimmer, and a small electric chainsaw that was also used. They didn't touch the lawnmower, weed whacker, extension cords, or the old radio I had in there. No idea why they took what they did, but I guess they figured they could resell them or something. I checked my camera footage, and there were my 3 nephews, ages 16, 15, and 14, breaking into my shed with one of their dad's large claw hammers. I recognize the hammer because it's bright yellow and black, and their dad has a bunch of them. It only took them a few hits to smash that cheap lock. After they first broke into my shed, they took what they could by hand, and then they came back with some shopping carts that I'm guessing they also stole. But it took them a few trips to get all of the cans, and they didn't bother to even try and close the door when they were done. My sister and brother-in-law first denied their kids stole anything from me, so I went to their house and showed them the security footage from my cameras. I had not told them I had had cameras installed, and the reason I had the cameras put in was because of prior thefts by my nephews. It started with food and snacks, and then moved on to DVDs and video games, then pretty much anything they thought they could smuggle out after that. And anytime I made them return stuff they had stolen from me, I was treated like the bad guy, and then got the fakest apologies I've ever heard. And they never got in much trouble from their parents either. The final straw happened last year when my nephews broke into my house and stole 3 6-packs of my favorite beer from the fridge. They used my hidden spare key to get in, and also used my bathroom and didn't even flush it, and also went all over the floor, and I'm pretty sure it was intentional. The beer they stole was hidden in one of their bedrooms when I confronted my sister and brother-in-law about my nephew stealing it, and I was basically given an equivalent to "boys will be boys" when I wanted them punished. So I had the cameras put in and told no one, which was a smart move. When my sister and brother-in-law saw the camera footage of my nephew stealing from me, they seemed furious, but they were actually madder that their boys skipped school to steal from me. They had spent all day making repeated trips to the bottle drop and cashing the cans by machine. The bottle drop also pays by machine, so they just kept bringing the cans in until they cashed them all. And then they bought video games and junk food with the money. Said money actually amounted to nearly $200. With that and the destroyed padlock, I told my sister and brother-in-law that they now owed me $200. My sister and brother-in-law went from being angry at their kids to making excuses for them, and then being angry at me for wanting that money back when I know they have 3 kids and a mortgage. I said it was either that or I go to the police and press charges. They told me to get out, and I said they have 2 days to decide how to pay me back before I go to the cops. I got back everything else my nephew stole, though they had already used the gas for something else. But over the next couple of days, my sister and brother-in-law were blowing up my phone with a ton of messages, both verbal and text. At first, they were calling me heartless because it was right after the holidays and they have 3 kids and a mortgage. Then they started gaslighting me. They were even threatening me. And all of this would go in a repeating cycle. My nephews chimed in from another cell phone and were sending me lots of messages of their own, which were more fake apologies and gaslighting. My eldest nephew even sent me a picture of himself holding a soda can and giving me a gesture. So I guess they weren't taking my threats of going to the police seriously because family. When I last spoke with my sister and brother-in-law, they refused to negotiate any sort of method of repayment for what my nephews did, even when I suggested they just sell the video games that were purchased with the money from the cans. Then they had the audacity to say I'd actually tempted my nephews by having the cans in my shed to begin with. Oh yes, I'm the devil snake that tempted my nephews with a shed full of cans that just screamed, money, money, money. So that was it. I went to the police station that morning and filed the report. Gave them a copy of the video footage of my nephew stealing from my shed. I gave them the broken lock they had smashed, showed them all of the texts, which were screenshotted and also given as evidence. Heck, I even gave them a copy of the photo my eldest nephew had sent me. But my nephews were indeed arrested on Saturday. Police came to their house, and my sister and brother-in-law were forced to let them in because they had a warrant. Apparently, all 3 of my nephews went from being little jerks to crying like babies when they were being put in cuffs. I know this because a neighbor I'm acquainted with that's sort of friends with my sister was there to see it. And shortly after the arrest, my sister and brother-in-law were blowing up my phone again. They weren't able to get their kids out of jail till Monday morning, and now the boys are being charged with larceny, willful destruction of property, and vandalism and harassment. The police took this whole case pretty seriously, as there had been complaints about my nephews for some time, but nothing was proven until now. The past few months, bags of cans have actually been going missing all over the area. Don't know if it was my nephews or not, but they're likely suspects. And with word spreading of their arrest, let's hope other neighbors with security cameras come forward with more footage. My sister and brother-in-law showed up at my house too. I refused to open the door and told them that this all happened because they are enablers who refused to hold their kids accountable for their actions. That made them just scream and pound on my door more until I threatened to call the police on them too. And since I've done it already, they know I mean it now. So they left without any more trouble, but they went back to blowing up my phone. I didn't block my sister or brother-in-law. Instead, I just decided to save all of the messages they send me because I've made the decision to take them to small claims court over this. I don't really need or want the money and have already replaced the destroyed padlock with a much better one. However, the kids aren't the only ones who need to be taught a lesson. In the end, I hope I put them in enough of a hole that they learn not to mess with me ever again. I also have the full support of my family on this. My parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. They're all supporting me in this because my nephews have stolen from them too. And after banning my nephews from my house, some of them did the same. I'm going to push for my nephews to get community service. And the reason why isn't just because it's a good idea, but also because I know that they'll hate that the most. Whenever made to do any kind of work they don't want to do, they just stand around griping and act like the whole world is against them. So hardly anything ever gets done. Perhaps a few 100 hours of unpaid work will teach them some manners. They've been spoiled far too much. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.